welcome to today's session. Today we are going to talk about the Intune portal. So guys, this is going to be a level 100 kind of a video wherein I'm going to browse through all the various sections of Intune Ibiza console, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So guys, one of the prerequisites before watching this video is you should know what you are supposed to do. And in this video, I'm going to show you how exactly to do it, how to make the policies, where exactly to go, how to make the various kinds of configuration and compliance policies and app protection policies, how to set up a MAM configuration or a MDM configuration, how to set up the enrollment and whatnot. But I'm not going to talk about the basic difference. I mean, the basics of what MAM is or what MDM is. I am going to assume that we are already set with that. So guys, there are three ways, if I may put it that way, of accessing the Intune portal, or what is open in front of you, what we refer to as the Ibiza console. There are three ways of accessing it. The first of them is, I'm going to open it right in front of you. It is going into the website portal.azure.com. So once we go to the website, this page opens up, and we are prompted to log in. Now what, let me just close the existing one. Okay, let me just do it again fresh. So we have to enter portal.azure.com. It asks us for our username and password. Once we enter that, then the portal opens up like it did for me. The second way of accessing the Intune portal is from the Office portal. So if I go to portal.office.com and press enter, I will have to log in with my credential. This credential which we are going to supply this user should not be a normal user. A normal user will not be able to access any of the blades. So that user needs either to be an global admin or an Intune admin. So if he's only managing the Intune part of things, then he needs to be an Intune admin. If he's managing the Azure blades as well, then he needs to be an Azure admin. So over here, I will have to go into the administrators. So this is the tab for that. This is the admin center. And when I go to the admin center, from here, I can either go to Intune or go to Azure Active Directory or use the Office MDM. So I'm going to click on Intune. It is going to open up another tab for me, which is devicemanagement.microsoft.com. And if let me just see what happens if I click on the Azure Active Directory. All right, I'm waiting for it to load. Okay, it's still loading for me. Okay, so if I click on the Azure Active Directory, I believe portal.azure.com loads up. And if I click on Intune, then devicemanagement.microsoft.com opens up. Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, all right, send. All right. So to sum it up, guys, there are three ways of accessing it. The first way is by going into the website portal.azure.com. The second way is by going into portal.office.com and going into the admin center and clicking on Intune or clicking on Azure Active Directory. And the third way is directly going into devicemanagement.microsoft.com. Okay, so let me just explain to you guys the difference between these three consoles. So, well, in a way, we have got only two consoles because this is actually redirecting us to the Intune console, right? So this is like kind of acting as a mediator, if you would. So let me just close this real quick and close this also real quick. So over here, you can see that there are two consoles. One is portal.azure.com and the second one is devicemanagement.microsoft.com. Let me explain to you guys the difference between these two. If you are an Intune admin, then more often than not, this is wherein you will be going to devicemanagement.microsoft.com, and everything that you are able to see on this page is related to Intune and Intune only. That is, if you are an Intune admin, this is what we will be dealing with more often than not. However, if you are a global admin and you're taking care of Intune as well as the Azure part of the things, then this is the portal for you. That is portal.azure.com. So if we come to portal.azure.com and then we go to Azure Active Directory, then over here we will be able to see the different places wherein we can configure things in Azure Active Directory. Now, if we want to go to Microsoft Intune and manage Microsoft Intune, then we will have to click on Microsoft Intune. Another tab will pop open, and this is wherein we will be managing Microsoft Intune. And if you look closely, this is actually same as the other tab which we had open. So that is devicemanagement.microsoft.com, and they both look the same. The point that I'm trying to make, guys, is if you go to portal.azure.com, you have two choices. The first one is you can go to Azure Active Directory and manage Azure, or you can click on Microsoft Intune and get redirected to the Microsoft Intune part of the things. So that's one way of doing it, and the other way of doing it is directly going to the place wherein this Microsoft Intune is redirecting us to. That is devicemanagement.microsoft.com. Okay, all right. So just one more thing I'd like to mention. This portal that we are looking at right now, this is the new portal. Earlier there was a console which was referred to as the Silverlight console, which was used by Intune, and using that we used to manage Windows 7 and Windows XP devices. This is the newer console, and this console is referred to as the Ibiza console. Okay, so this is the Ibiza console that we are looking at. The older Silverlight console has been decommissioned, and this is the way forward. Okay, just one more verbiage which I would like you guys to know is on the left hand side, what we can see as are referred to as blades. Okay, so all these different sections that we have on the left hand side are referred to as blades. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so let me just come back to portal.azure.com. Okay, so I'm at the home page. I'm at portal.azure.com, and over here I can see that we have got a few favorites added. If you don't have any favorites added, probably you will be landing at the home page at the to begin with. So when you are at the home page, what I can suggest is you can just click into all resources and then type Intune, and Intune will open up. You can just click on Intune, and then the same page will open up on the right hand side as it would if we were to click on Microsoft Intune. Okay, so yeah guys, just this verbiage, make sure that if you're making use of Intune, you're going to the correct URL. You're not going to the old URL or the old Silverlight portal. You're going to the Ibiza console, and you are either going to portal.azure.com and clicking on Microsoft Intune, or going to devicemanagement.microsoft.com. And the other prerequisite being, make sure that the user who is logging in has Intune admin role excuse me, has an Intune admin role or has a global admin role assigned to him. How to do that, I would show it to you guys. So guys, now that we are at the Intune portal, let me just give you a quick walkthrough. So before I actually show you guys the Intune portal, let me just come back to the previous tab and show you the Azure portal once real quick. So if I click on the Azure Active Directory, over here this is the Azure Active Directory, and it starts with users and groups. So these users and groups would in Azure Active Directory is similar to what we would have a user or a group in our on-prem. So in our on-prem, if we were to go to domain controller and type dsa.msc, we would be able to see a lot of users and a lot of security groups or distribution list groups. Similarly, these are the these are the users that I have, and I can reset the password, I can delete a user from here. And there are two ways of having a user on the cloud. The first way is like just clicking on new user and just entering a username, a password, and just entering a user credential or entering the user attributes. The second way is, which is very common these days, is like using a tool called Azure AD Connect. What Azure AD Connect does is it syncs the user from on-prem to the cloud. What I mean to say is, let's just say that we have a few users, we have a lot of users in our on-prem domain, in our on-prem hosted domain controller, and I want to sync these users to the cloud. So what I would be doing is I would be running a tool called Azure AD Connect, entering a few credentials, and then that those users will be synced to the cloud. So as you can see, I've got so many users over here, and if I look at the source, it says that the source is Windows Server AD. What this actually means is this user was not created on the cloud by clicking on new user over here, but it was synced from my on-prem. On the other hand, this user Alex was created on Azure Active Directory itself. It was not created on the on-prem. So the point that I'm trying to make here, guys, is there are two kinds of users that we can possibly have. We can create a user on the cloud itself, or we can create a user on the on our on-prem domain, and then sync it with the cloud using a tool like Azure AD Connect. So if it's a user who has been created on-prem, then we won't be having the option of changing any attributes like resetting its password or something like that, unless and until write back has been initiated. So if I try and do a reset of the password for that user, it says that unfortunately you cannot reset this user's password because password write back is not enabled in your tenant. This is something which we will have to enable. By default, we can only reset password or change attributes for the users which have been created on the cloud itself and which are not getting synced from the on-prem to the cloud. Okay, so let's just say that the point that I'm trying to make here, guys, is when I click on Azure Active Directory blade, when I go to users and groups, this is what I come up with. I mean, I can see all the users that are present, all the groups that are present, which were either created on the Azure cloud itself or which were synced from the on-prem to the Azure using a tool called Azure AD Connect. Okay, and where to get that tool, let me just show you that as well. So over here you can see something called Azure AD Connect. So if I click on Azure AD Connect, I can download that tool from here, or you can go to Google and type download Azure AD Connect for Windows, and you can download that tool as well, and you can install that on a server. And once that tool is installed, that tool will sync all the users. By default it syncs only users, but you can sync devices as well. So it will sync all the users and the devices to your tenant. So it will sync everything from your on-prem to the cloud. Okay, now let me just move to the Microsoft Intune sections of it. So if I click on Microsoft Intune, this is the page that opens up, devicemanagement.microsoft.com. This is the Intune portal, and over here also you would be, if you notice, you can see there are two blades. One is user and one is groups. So these two blades are the same blades which we saw in the previous Azure under the Azure section of it. So just for easing up just for our convenience and just to make sure that we don't have to switch between two portals, we have these two, in fact these three: conditional access, users, and groups. These three blades are actually present under both the sections, under Microsoft Intune as well as under Azure AD. So that, because more often than not an Intune admin ends up working with a user. So if there is a new user onto which a new user that needs to be created, or let's just say that if there is a new user who wants to enroll his device and needs a EMS E3 or a E5 license, then the Intune admin would have to assign a license to that user from this portal. So it makes more sense if the Intune admin has that access or has that feasibility from this portal itself rather than going to the Azure portal. Okay. So guys, let's just walk through this portal and see what all do we have. And the first thing which we have is the dashboard. This is wherein you will be landing by default when you enter your username and password upon accessing devicemanagement.microsoft.com or the Intune portal. It just gives us a graphical or a pictorial representation of what is going on in the portal. If it's a new setup for you guys, you might not be able to see a lot of things because you don't have any devices enrolled, or you don't have a lot of applications published. But this is what it says, that roundabout view of what is going on in the tenant. It's saying that as far as device enrollment is concerned, no Intune enrollment failures took place in this tenant in the past 7 days, and all the devices are in compliance. If some devices are not in compliance, it would give us a count as well, so that the admin, just by coming into the dashboard, can get 100 feet view and find out how many devices are failing, how exactly the enrollment is going, if the devices are not being compliant and whatnot. Similarly, for device configuration, it shows that if there is any device onto which has a device configuration profile assigned to it, and if for any reason that profile did not get assigned to the device, it will show up in the dashboard as well. As far as apps are concerned, we can provision applications as well, may that be LOB applications or store apps or any kind of applications we can provision, may that be an Office suite. We can provision it from Intune. So if installation of any of those applications fails, the dashboard is also showing us that. If we have applied any app protection policy onto any user, it is also showing us that. It's also showing us users onto which no policy has been assigned. If we scroll down, we can see a pictorial representation of all the enrolled devices that we have in our tenant. So this is showing us the Intune enrolled devices, and when was it last updated, and how many devices do I have actually enrolled to my tenant at this point of time. Out of this, it's just giving me a graphical view of how many Windows devices I have, how many Android devices I have, iOS, Mac, Windows mobile devices. So it's just again a roundabout view. How is the compliance status looking, and how is the configuration profiles looking? So yeah, that's pretty much it that you would see when you click on the dashboard. So if I click on all services, it's going to show you everything that you have available. So by default, you might have a lot of things. So what I would suggest is just get these things selected. So if you click on, let's just say, ebooks, it gets added on the left hand side. If I remove the star next to the ebooks, it gets removed. So what I would suggest is just bookmark. This is kind of like a bookmark. So what I would suggest is just bookmark these three. These are the important, these tabs or these blades. These are the important ones, and these are the ones which we would be dealing with more often than not. Okay. All right. So whenever a device gets enrolled to Intune, this is wherein the device will show up. So you will have to go into portal.azure.com and then Microsoft Intune and then all devices, or you can go to devicemanagement.microsoft.com and then devices and then all devices. So I would like to take a moment and differentiate between the devices that you are able to see under all devices and the devices which you are able to see under Azure AD devices, because it might cause a little confusion to begin with. So over here, if you can see under Azure AD devices, I have got a bunch of devices that are present over here. But if I go into all devices, I can see only only 4 or 5 devices that are present over there. So guys, the devices which I'm able to see under Microsoft Intune all devices are the devices which are managed via Intune. These are the devices which are enrolled to Intune. and these are the devices onto which we can push policies from Intune, or we can push applications, or we can monitor and supervise via Intune. So these are the devices which Microsoft Intune is dealing with. So if we take a look, it shows the device name. It gives us that managed by is MDM, which in this case is Microsoft Intune is our MDM, or mobile device management. The ownership, it can be a corporate device or a personal device. I mean, if it's a BYOD kind of a scenario, then the user is bringing his own device. If it's a then it's a personal device. If the company is providing the device, then it is like corporate. And then it shows the OS, like it's Windows or Android or Mac or iOS. It shows the OS version, and it shows device action, as in if the admin from the portal has initiated any action on the device. If the admin has decided to initiate a wipe of the device, then the device action would be showing up over here, as in like the wipe is pending or something like that. Email address, if there is an email address associated with the device, and the last check-in time, as in when was the last time the device checked in with the Intune service. So if I click on columns, I can add a few more things as well, as in the enrollment date, the IMEI number, and if I scroll down, whether it is jailbroken or not, whether it is supervised or not, the device category. So let me just scroll down, the device model is there, the phone number. So let's just say I select these some of these options and click on apply, then those columns are going to get added onto this field. So now I believe we should be able to see the IMEI number of the device as well, whether the device is jailbroken or not. So if the device is the user principal name that was used to enroll the device, and the model of the device. So the first device is a virtual machine, the second one is a Samsung device, the last two are virtual machines as well. The not Samsung device, I believe it's a iOS device. So I mean, if the device is iOS only, then it's going to show not iOS, it's an Android device. So yeah, so that's the thing, guys. You can go to the columns and you can add a few more fields. If you were to delete a device, so let's just say that the end user has enrolled a device to Intune, but I as an Intune admin don't want to manage any device anymore. Or let's just say that the end user had enrolled a device to Intune, and now I want to wipe that device and give that device to somebody else and remove all the data. So the way to do that would be, I will click on that device and then I would do a delete. Doing a delete would remove, I mean, I can do a wipe as well, but if I do a delete, it's going to remove everything from the device, as well as it is going to remove the data, corporate data, as well as going to remove the enrollment status as well. So the device's entry is going to get removed from here. So I would if I click on that, it actually shows that if you delete this device, you will no longer be able to view or manage the device from Intune portal. The device will no longer be allowed to access your company's corporate resource. Company data may be wiped from the device if the device tries to check in after it is deleted. So if I do a yes over here, the delete has been initiated. If I close this, and now you can see that the device is no longer present. Earlier I had 4 devices, but now I have only 3. So now that device is no longer present from that in the Intune portal, and from that device all the corporate data will get automatically wiped. So we would practically be doing this if, let's just say that there was a device, a user was making use of it, now the device that user has got another device, or now that user has left the organization, now that device needs to be handed over to another user. What we ideally would be doing is the admin would be wiping that device from the Intune portal, deleting that, and then not wiping that, deleting that, and then he would be handing over that device to the other user, or the first user would be handing that device to the second user. Now let's just talk about the Azure AD devices. These Azure AD devices are in no way related to Intune. So let me just put it this way. Any device which is present under all devices will be present under Azure AD devices as well. But any device which is present under Azure AD devices may or may not be present under all devices. So let me just repeat what I said. Anything which is present over here will be present over here, but everything that is present over here might or might not be present over here. So what it means is Azure AD devices, this blade is like kind of a superset, and all devices is like a subset of Azure AD devices. So Azure AD devices is like this entire planet, and all devices is like a continent on this planet. So Azure AD devices contains everything. All devices contains some things out of, or may contain everything but cannot contain anything which is not there to begin with under Azure AD devices. Okay, so like Azure AD devices is like the entire planet, and all devices is like the, let's just say, continents in this planet. So it can only contain the 7 continents, but it cannot contain any continent which is not there in this planet to begin with, right? So the logic is, as I said, all devices is containing the Intune enrolled devices. So any device which is enrolled to Intune will come up under all devices. Azure AD devices contains only those devices which are registered to Azure AD. So if there is a device which is Azure AD registered, or if there is a device which is Azure AD joined, only those devices will be showing up under Azure AD devices. Now if that device is Azure AD registered and Azure AD joined and Intune enrolled, then that device would show up under both the places. But if that device is only Azure AD registered and Azure AD joined and not enrolled to Intune, then it won't show up under all devices. It will only show up under Azure AD devices. Okay. So guys, let me just show you a quick diagram, and I hope that this makes sense. So, okay. So in the portal, let's just say that this is my setup. Okay. I have some laptops which are registered. I have a laptop 1, a laptop 2, and a laptop 3. And these 3 laptops are registered to Azure AD. And the laptop 4 and laptop 5, these 2 laptops are Azure AD registered and enrolled to Intune. Okay, I have 3 desktops, out of which the desktop 1 and desktop 2 are Azure AD registered or are Azure AD joined, and the desktop 3 is Azure AD registered or Azure AD joined and enrolled to Intune. If this is the setup, and I have got a mobile device, maybe iOS or Android or Windows, that device is enrolled to Intune. Okay, if that is the setup, then if I go to my portal and if I go to Azure AD devices, then as per this setup I will be able to see 9 devices over there, because these 4 devices are Azure AD registered or are Azure AD joined. Therefore, obviously, they are going to be present under this section of Azure AD devices, because this contains all the devices that are Azure AD registered or Azure AD joined or hybrid Azure AD joined, and it is also going to contain these 4 devices which are enrolled to Intune, because in getting enrolled to Intune is the second phase. The first phase is the device has to get Azure AD registered or Azure AD joined or hybrid Azure AD joined. A device cannot be enrolled to Intune without being Azure AD registered or Azure AD joined. I mean, Azure is the superset and Intune is the subset, right? So the device has its entry first created in the Azure, and then it will be enrolled to Intune. So if this is the setup, that only we have enrolled only 2 laptops, a desktop and a cell phone, in that case, if we go to the all devices, we will be able to see 9 devices. I mean, if we go to Azure AD devices, we will be able to see 9 devices, and if we go to all devices, then as per my diagram, we will be able to see 4 devices over here. which are enrolled to Intune. Just one more quick thing, guys. A cell phone, like if it's a Windows device, then as you can see, it's a laptop or a desktop. Some of the laptops, two laptops are Azure AD registered or maybe Azure AD joined, and two laptops are enrolled to Intune. Two desktops are Azure AD registered or Azure AD joined, and one desktop is Azure AD registered or Azure AD joined and enrolled to Intune. However, we cannot see any cell phone that is Azure AD registered but not enrolled to Intune. This is because, as per the logic, a device cannot be a cell phone device like an iOS or an Android phone cannot be Azure AD registered and and not be enrolled to Intune. Obviously, I'm not talking about MAM without enrollment scenario. I'm talking about with enrollment scenario only. In that case, what I'm trying to say, guys, is if it's a Windows 10 device, then the Windows 10 device can be Azure AD registered or Azure AD joined. In that case, its entry will show up only under this blade. However, if the devices are getting enrolled to Intune, their devices will show up over here. So just keep that in mind and just don't get confused. That is pretty much the difference between these two blades. So if you are seeing a lot of devices over Azure AD devices and less devices over all devices, don't get alarmed. Just keep that in mind that probably you have more devices which are Azure AD registered and less devices which are enrolled to Intune. Also, one more thing, let's just say that I enrolled a device. Obviously, that device was Azure AD registered first and then it got enrolled. And then if I unenrolled it, then its entry is going to get automatically removed from here. But its entry does not get automatically removed from here. That is from Azure AD devices. Because this cleanup is something which is taken care by the Azure AD team, so I cannot pretty much comment on that. I think their cleanup happens once in 30 days or something like that. But what I'm trying to say is, if I unenroll a device, its entry from all devices will get pretty much removed from there instantly, but its entry from Azure AD devices will not get removed instantly. It might be there for 30 days or so. So that is something which you might keep in mind if you're deleting a device from all device. If you're deleting a device's entry from all devices, you might want to come to all devices, search for the device and delete it from there as well. Because as you can see, these are all stale devices which are present under Azure AD devices for me, but are not present under all devices because they were enrolled at some point of time. Now they are no longer enrolled, but their entry has not been removed. Like for example, let me show you the first one. Its name is India's iPad 2, and it was an iPad running with iOS version of 11.4.1. If I look at MDM managed, it shows that Microsoft Intune, meaning that this device was enrolled to Intune, but I cannot see this device over here, meaning that this device was at some point of time enrolled to Intune and then this device was unenrolled. As this device was unenrolled, its entry got removed from all devices, but its tail entry is still there under Azure AD devices, because as I said, its cleanup does not happen so well. I mean, it might take around 30 days or so for the old entries to get flushed. Okay. All right. So as I said, if a device is only Azure AD registered, not enrolled, it will only show up over here, not in the firmware blade. In that case, you will be able to see this section as Azure AD registered or Azure AD joined or hybrid Azure AD joined or something like that. Okay. You can export this report as well, or you can search for a device. You can apply a date range. You can increase or decrease the column. By default, I believe all the columns are checked. I have removed a few columns. You can increase it as well. Just like you can delete an Intune enroll device, you can delete this Azure AD device as well. So yeah, all you'll have to do is click on the device and click on delete. Device action. Uh, this is something which this is kind of a logging, if you might say. So there are two kinds of logging which are there. One is the audit logs and one is the device actions. So audit logs and device action, first of all, guys, is for anything and everything that an Intune admin is doing. For example, let's just say that there is an end user who has enrolled an iOS device and that end user unenrolls his device. That will not get logged over here because that is an end user activity. However, let's just say that there was an end user who had enrolled an iOS device and the admin decides to unenroll his device by clicking on delete or by doing a wipe. In that case, that is going to get logged over here. So this is only admin side logging and not the end user side logging. This is very useful in, let's just say that you have multiple admins in your environment and one device got wiped or flushed. We are trying to identify which admin exactly did that and trying to find out the loopholes. So device action also more or less shows the same thing. It shows that if any device was retired or wiped or anything that was done from the portal end, it will show. It will also show it was initiated by whom. Okay, so that's pretty much there, guys. We can set up a TeamViewer Connect as well. I mean, if we as an admin want to take a remote session for the end user, we can set up TeamViewer from here. We will have to set up a connection, and we have something called device cleanup rules. So device cleanup rules is especially for Intune devices. I mean, as I said, if I am unenrolling a device, the device should ideally get removed automatically. But I can also do this, that let's just say that there is some device, let's just say that I have got 100 devices. Out of those 100 devices, all the devices are enrolled to Intune. None of them have been unenrolled, but out of those 100 devices, 20 devices have been powered off since past 2 months. Okay, so if the devices are powered off, that means that they do not have any access to internet, which means in turn that they have not checked in with the Intune service. So which in a way we can say that they are stale devices as of now. So what we can do is we can set up a device cleanup rule for such devices, and what it would do is it would automatically remove the devices which have not checked in for, let's just say, past 3 months or past 6 months. So if I set this to yes, then let's just read what it is saying. It says that set your Intune device cleanup rules to delete Intune MDM enrolled devices that appear inactive, stale, or unresponsive. Intune applies cleanup rules immediately and continuously so that your device records remain correct. So if I say delete device based on the last check-in date as yes, it will tell us that give me a time frame. Delete devices that haven't checked in for this many days. If I do as 91, so any device which has not checked in for 91 days, any device which has not checked in for 91 days will get automatically removed from the all devices section, because it says Intune device cleanup rules, right? It's not saying Azure device cleanup rules. So it's going to get removed from here, not here. So device cleanup rules is something like this. I mean, as I said, if it's a device which has been unenrolled, that device is going to get removed from here automatically. But if there is a device which is inactive, we never unenrolled it, the end user never went to company portal and unenrolled the device, or the admin never went to the portal and unenrolled or deleted or retired wiped the device. The device was always enrolled, but the device is not active and is not checking in for, let's just say, a lot of time, maybe let's just say more than 90 days, because the frame we have is between 90 to 270. So if the device is not checking in, the device is not active, the admin can set up a rule and make sure that if the device is not checking in, all such devices should get removed automatically. Okay, so this is a basic view of the devices section, what exactly we will be looking at under devices, what is the difference between all devices, Azure devices, device actions, and device cleanup rules. Okay, And this again shows the same thing as we were able to see in the overview. Under the dashboard, it is showing how many devices are currently enrolled to my tenant. Out of these, how many are Windows, Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows mobile devices. Okay, this just gives us a pictorial representation of the same. Over here, it also shows what's the name of our tenant. It shows where exactly our tenant is located, as in you might call it kind of like a data center in the cloud, where exactly this tenant is located, and what is the MDM authority. When I say MDM authority, I mean that let's just say that we can have like SCCM as our MDM authority as well, like a config manager as our MDM authority as well. We would ideally be having it if we have something like hybrid environment, wherein SCCM is used to push all the policies, but we are pushing it via the Intune because the devices are over the internet and not over the intranet. Okay, so I mean, right now in our case, we are talking about Intune standalone. So the MDM authority is Microsoft Intune, the tenant name is there, and the tenant location is there, and that is what we will be seeing under the devices tab per se. So guys, now let's just talk about the device enrollment. Any device which I said is enrolled will show up over here under all devices. But there is something which needs to be set under device enrollment. Only after that the devices are going to get enrolled. So if I go to dashboard and then device enrollment, you can see that there are primarily three sections. Apple enrollment, which takes care of pre-configurations that needs to be done for enrolling an iOS device. Android enrollment, which takes care about the configurations that needs to be done so that the end users can enroll their Android devices. And Windows enrollment, which takes care about of the configurations that needs to be done so that the end users can enroll their Windows devices. So primarily there are two prerequisites that the admin has to do, mind you, not the end user. The admin has to do so that the end users can enroll their devices to Intune. The first prerequisite is that the admin has to assign a EMS E3 or a E5 license to the end user. So the way he would be doing that is he would be going into the users tab, he would be going into all users, and then he will be clicking on, let's just say any user, let's just say Liz, and then supposing that he already has a license assigned, I mean he already has a licenses purchased, he will go into the licenses option and then he would add a license by clicking on assign. Once he clicks on assign, he will have an option of going to products, and then over here he will be able to see all the licenses that he has purchased, and from there he can either select E5 or E3 or Office E5, or let's just say Power BI in this case for testing purpose. So I will select Power BI and then I'll click on assign, and then the user is going to have that license. If I go to devices and then back to licenses, I should be able to see Power BI license assigned to this user. There you go. So the first thing that the admin has to do is purchase the license and assign that license to the end user. Once that has been done, then the second thing that that's the admin needs to do to facilitate enrollment is setting the MDM scope. Setting the MDM scope is something which is not done from the Intune portal, it is something which is done from the Azure portal. So let's just go back to portal.azure.com and log in as a global admin. Once that is done, this is something which can only be done by a global admin and not by a Intune admin. So please keep that in mind, because we are going into the Azure AD Blade, not to the Microsoft Intune Blade. So go to the Azure AD Blade and then click on Mobility MDM and MAM. Okay, this is wherein we set the scope. So click on Mobility MDM and MAM, and then we will go into Microsoft Intune, and then we will set the MDM scope as all. Right now I am only talking about the enrollment part of things, therefore I'm not going to discuss on what is a MAM scope and what is MAM. For the admin to facilitate successful enrollment, so right now we were talking about device enrollment, so for an admin to successfully facilitate Apple, Android or Windows enrollment, the admin has to make sure that the MDM scope is set to all, please don't change the URLs, and the MAM scope is set to none, please don't mess with the URLs. If it has been changed in any way, just click on restore default MDM URLs. Whatever URL was there to begin with out of the box, it will get restored. Just make this as all, make this as none, do a save, and you will be good to go. Okay, so prerequisites, as I said, by default there are only two prerequisites for the admin. The first prerequisite is that the admin has to assign a EMS E3 or a E5 license to the end user, to the user who is going to enroll the device. And the second prerequisite is that the admin has to set the MDM scope as all in the Azure AD Blade. Once that has been done, now the basic prerequisite has been taken care of. Now the basic prerequisite has been taken care of by the admin. Still, it doesn't mean that the end user can just enroll the devices. So let me just take a moment and explain how exactly it's going to be the end user experience. So once the prereqs has been met by the Intune admin, the end user will get his hands on a mobile device, a brand new fresh mobile device or a used mobile device. He will go to the Play Store or App Store and download an application called the Company Portal app. This is a free application. It can be downloaded from Play Store or App Store, and it is publicly available, and it is a mandate. So you can say that this Company Portal app is like a broker. So whatever policies we are pushing from the Intune portal, from the Intune service, it goes to the device via the Company Portal application. So that application comprehends what Intune portal is telling the device to do, and then it tells translates it into a language which the device is able to understand. So it kind of like acts as a broker or like a Zstone. So so the end user experience is going to be that the end user has to download the Company Portal app and then log into that Company Portal app using his username and password. That username and password needs to have the EMS license assigned to it. So if the end user has EMS license assigned to him and all the other prerequisites have been met, by this prerequisite I mean the prerequisite which the admin is supposed to fulfill, then his device will get enrolled to Intune. Now coming back to the prerequisite which the admin has to fulfill, the first one of them being he needs to assign license to user, the second one of them being he needs to set the MDM scope, and then so these two prerequisites are same for every OS. Now for Apple, there is a different prerequisite which the admin needs to fulfill in order for him to facilitate any user's enrollment to Intune. For Apple, what he needs to do is this is a one-time setup, so it needs to be done only once. So what the user needs to do is he needs to go into the Apple enrollment, and then he needs to create something called a Apple push notification certificate. He needs to click on Apple MDM push certificate, and then he needs to set this up. Currently it has been set up for me, therefore it's showing an access. If we are doing it for the first time, then it needs to be set up. So what needs to be done is user needs to go over Apple enrollment and then click on I grant, and then he has to download the CSR. Once he has downloaded the CSR, once he has downloaded that, he has to enter his Apple ID, and then he has to upload that CSR into Apple's website. So he has to go into this website and he has to log in with his Apple ID and password, and he has to upload that CSR. Once he uploads that CSR, he will be downloading a file from here, which is an extension of .pem. So he will be downloading that file and uploading that file over here. Once he uploads that file over here and then clicks on upload, a sync is going to run and the status is going to be active. Now let me just explain you guys why exactly is this needed. So what we have done until now is this is again a one-time setup, and for the first time the Intune admin, only one Intune admin has to do it, and he has to do it only once in his tenant. This has to be done to facilitate Apple enrollment. So what needs to be done is the admin has to come up over here. He has to go to Apple enrollment and download a CSR from here. He has to upload that CSR to Apple's website, download a .pem from there, and upload that PEM over the Intune portal. So what exactly happens is when we are pushing any policies from the Intune portal, then so let's just look at it this way. I know that I could have come up with a better diagram, but so from Intune, if we are to push any policies to the end devices, these are the iOS devices, we cannot do it over the air. Devices directly once the devices are enrolled. But if it's an iOS device, Intune cannot directly send the policies or applications directly to the iOS devices, even if the devices are enrolled to Intune. This is a security feature from Apple. No, not only Intune, no MDM can do that. So the way it needs to be done is Intune first has to reach out to the Apple servers or the APNs, that is Apple Push Notification Server. Intune reaches out to the APN, and APN reaches out to the devices and sends the policies which Intune wants them delivered. So Intune cannot directly, so there, this is the step 1 and this is the step 2. So Intune directly cannot push the policies. Intune has to first push it to the APN, and then the APN will push it to the iOS device. So APN in this case will act as a mediator or a broker. This is again like a security feature, because well, Apple in a way is not trusting any MDM to directly supervise any of its iOS devices. Therefore, it works as a mediator. So for this to happen, we have to establish a secure channel between Intune and APN. Okay. So the way to do that is first we go into the Intune portal and download that CER from the Intune portal. That's the step 1, and we upload that CER to the to that website which I just showed you, identity website. That is an Apple website. We go to that website, upload that CER. From that website, we download a PEM and upload it to the Intune portal. So we will upload a .pem. Okay. So the step 1 is from APN website. Once the CER has been uploaded, download the PEM. This is step 2. So once this has been uploaded and once this has been downloaded and uploaded back into the Intune portal, all we have to do is we have to provide a user ID and password, an Apple ID. Once that has been provided, over here we have to provide an Apple ID, and then we have to provide that .pem. Once that has been uploaded, the we just have to save it, and then it will show as active. This is the Apple ID that I have used, and it is by default active for 1 year. for until expiration. So after 1 year, we have to go to the website again, use the same ID, and then download the same .pem. This is something which has to be done annually. So it's over here showing when exactly is my Apple push notification service is expiring. And this ID, this Apple ID, which I use to log into this website and generate and download it, it is incumbent that we make a note of it. If there are multiple admins, please make sure that admin is not using a personal ID, or even if he is, and he's sharing it with everybody, because this ID is the one which is associated with that certificate. So if it needs to be reissued, I mean, if it has expired and if we need to reissue it, then it is incumbent that we have the password for this ID, because we'll have to log into this website using that username and password and download that PEM again. So as far as prerequisite for Apple is concerned, this is the only prerequisite that needs to be taken care of. So once this channel is established between Intune and APN, then by uploading this APN certificate, by uploading this CSR and then downloading that PM and uploading it over here, once that has been done, then policies can be delivered from Intune to the iOS device via this APN. So this is the only prerequisite that has to be taken care of. So in Apple enrollment, once you have downloaded it from that website, uploaded it over here, and once the status is as active, the end users will be able to enroll their devices to Intune. The end users will be able to enroll their iOS devices to Intune. As far as Android is concerned, there are two kinds of Android enrollment. One is Android Legacy, also referred to as Android for Work or Android Enterprise. I'm sorry, one is Android Legacy, also known as the Legacy, I mean the normal Android, and the other is Android Enterprise or Android for Work. So there are two ways a end user can enroll his Android device to Intune. So let's just say that I am an end user. I am having an Android device. I'm having a Samsung Galaxy model with me, and I have installed the company portal application. I am logging into that company portal application with my username and password. And admin has already ensured, the Intune admin has already ensured that my account has a EMS E3 or a E5 license assigned to me. In that case, when I log into that company portal application from my Android device using my username and password, my device is going to get enrolled to Intune. Now there are two ways by which this device gets enrolled as an Android device, as a normal Android or as a Android Enterprise, formerly known as Android for Work. So the difference between normal Android enrollment and Android Enterprise enrollment is that if the device is getting enrolled as Android Enterprise, then it gives the admin a few more restrictions which he can impose. As in, let me just show you guys how to do it, and then I will tell you guys what is the advantage. So if I go to personal device and work profiles, and then okay, so I am right now at the device enrollment restriction page. Okay, so this is something which also you might want to keep in mind. There are two kinds of device restriction. There are two kinds of enrollment restriction. One is device type restriction and one is device limit restriction. So let's just take a look over this. There is a default device limit restriction, and what it is doing, it is limiting to 15 devices assigned to all users and all devices. What this means is any user will not be able to enroll more than 15 devices using the same account. Okay, if you want to restrict it even further, what you can do is you can probably create one more restriction. Let's see if it gives us the option of editing this. Yes, it does. So 15 is the maximum limit. If you want to reduce it down even further, and if you want to do it to 1 and do a save, and then assign it to a security group. What it would mean is everyone and anyone who is a part of that security group will be able to enroll only one device using his ID. If he tries to enroll a second device or a third device, it will give him an error saying that you have reached the maximum enrolled limit. That is what we do using device limit restrictions. Set limit to users, saying that the end user should not be able to enroll more than this number of device. The second kind of restriction that we can impose on users is device type restriction. If I want to restrict the users and say that, okay, my end user should not be able to enroll their iOS device, or let's just say that I have got 100 users in my environment, and out of those 100 users, I don't want my help desk users to be able to enroll their iOS devices to my environment. So what I would do, I would obviously will have to set up the APN certificate, because well, that is a prerequisite for, because the rest 90 users still need to enroll their device, right? If I want that nobody should be able to enroll their devices to iOS devices to my tenant, if I don't want to make use of it to begin with, then I won't be setting up the APN certificate at the first place, right? Because why take that step if I'm not managing iOS? But if I want that, okay, only 10 users or a specific set of users should not be able to enroll the device and rest should be, that means that I am actually managing the iOS devices, but I am trying to set a restriction on some. So for that, what I'll have to do is I'll have to create a security group, add those 10 users or add those users whom I don't want to be able to enroll the devices onto that security group, and then create a restriction over here. So I'll just click on this create restriction, and I'll just name it, let's just say no iOS ENROLLMENT restriction. Okay, I'll just name it no iOS restriction. Description is optional, and the restriction type I am going to say device type restriction. And in the selected platform, what I am going to do, I am going to block iOS. Rest everything is left to default. The only thing I have done is I have blocked the iOS. If I do a save and okay, this is mandatory. I mean, this is not mandatory. It is asking me whether I want to block a specific version. I don't want to do that. So that is fine. And once that is done, I'm going to do a create. Once it has been created, it will ask us to assign this. So it is still creating it. As over here, you can see that it is still going on. Let's just give it a moment while it gets created, and then we will be assigning it. So now it got created, and by default it comes to that overview tab. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to go into the assignments, and then assign. It will ask us to select a group. We'll just click on select group, and then we will assign it to a security group. This can be a security group created on the cloud, or this can be a security group created on-prem and then synced with the cloud. So let's just say that I select this ABC group and do a select, and then do a save. What this would mean is uh, this no iOS enrollment restriction is applicable on one group, on one security group, that is ABC, and anyone who is a part of this ABC group is going to be restricted to enroll his device as iOS, because this iOS is blocked. Android is allowed, Mac OS is allowed, Windows is allowed. So if any user who is a part of this ABC group goes to an Android device, opens up company portal, enters his username and password, his device will get enrolled. But if he goes to an iOS device, he will not be able to enroll his device. Okay. Similarly, as I said, if we are doing an Android enrollment, we have got two ways of enrolling an Android device. The first one is normal Android, and the second one is as Android Enterprise or as Android for Work. So if we want that some users in my environment should be able to enroll the devices as normal Android, and some should be able to enroll as Android for Enterprise, then the same thing needs to be done. We need to set up a device restriction policy for them. So we will be creating two groups. In the first restriction, uh, click on allow Android and block Android for work, assign it to the first group. And for the second one, we will click on block Android and allow Android for work, and then assign it to the second group. So whosoever has Android work profile as allowed, when he goes to the company portal and enrolls his device will get enrolled as Android for work. Whosoever has this turned as blocked and this turned as allowed, when he goes into the company portal and tries to enroll his device will be enrolled as normal Android device. If both are turned as allowed, then Android work profile takes precedence over Android, and the device gets enrolled as Android for work device and not as Android device. So this is wherein we will be setting up Android for work enrollment. So for Apple enrollment, the prerequisite is uploading the APN certificate. For Android enrollment, there is no prerequisite, but for Android for work enrollment, we will have to create a restriction and set it as allowed, because by default there is one restriction. If you see the restriction, this is the one that I created for iOS, but this is the default restriction applicable on everybody. So if I go to the default restrictions and click on platform, it disables Android for work and enables Android. Therefore, out of the box, if all the users try to enroll their Android device, all the devices get enrolled as normal Android and not as Android for work. So yeah, there is just one setting that needs to be done or activated for Android for work, but for normal Android enrollment, there is nothing that needs to be done like we did in case of iOS. So only iOS had that prereq. So guys, if I were to present you a deck and show it to you step by step, as in what comes first and what comes after that, then the process to set up an enrollment in a fresh tenant for the first time would be: the first prerequisite is obviously creating a user or syncing the user from on-prem and assigning Intune licenses to them. Then the second step would be setting the Mdm scope appropriately in the Azure Active Directory blade. Once that has been done, for iOS, all that needs to be done is downloading the cert from the Intune portal, uploading it in Apple portal, downloading the .pem from there, uploading it over here, establishing the channel, making sure that it's active. For the trust building, that is something which needs to be done for iOS. For Android, all we need to do is we need to make sure that if we are going to make use of Android for work, then in device enrollment restriction it has been set appropriately. If we want to make use of both, then we have to make sure that we have got two enrollment restrictions being targeted to two different security groups. So this is like out of the box. Other than that, there are few other functionalities which we can probably make use of. Like for bulk enrollment of iOS, we have something called DEP. You can refer to my other videos wherein I am going to do a detailed deep dive on Apple DEP. But DEP is device enrollment program, which is like used for bulk enrollment of iOS devices. So that is something which needs to be set up. It is not set up out of the box. And similarly for Windows, we have something called Windows Autopilot. It is for kind of like bulk provisioning of Windows devices. It customizes the out of the box experience for users. So it is these two things, DEP and Autopilot, is something which has to be which has to be configured. It is not configured in the Intune portal by default, and if it has to be made use of, then we need to customize that. But other than that, for iOS, for Android, and for Windows enrollment, these are the things which needs to be taken care of. So nothing needs to be done out of the box for Windows enrollment. I mean, if the Mdm scope is set and if the user has the license, then the user will be able to enroll his Windows device, and nothing has to be done over here. These are all mainly for, like this says, Windows Hello for Business, and rest all are for Windows Autopilot. Like over here it says that Windows deployment Autopilot deployment program. So I have a different nugget on Windows Autopilot, but you can refer to that for that. You can refer to that for details on this. Enrollment status page, this is still in preview. This is something as in, let's just say that I am enrolling a Windows device, and after enrollment there are some applications that have been provisioned to the user. Enrollment status page is something which actually shows the end user that what is the status of that application. As in, let's just say that I am the end user. I have a fresh Windows device. I am enrolling it. After it undergoes the enrollment process, there were 5 applications which the admin had provisioned to me. Therefore, once the device is enrolled, all those applications, if they were pushed as required, will get automatically installed on my device. So this enrollment status page is actually going to show what is the status of what is the installation status for those applications. This is something which can be used in conjunction with Autopilot or without Autopilot. So if I am creating a test uh, enrollment status page, this is how I would be doing it. So in the settings, I would go and it says show app and profile installation progress. If I do a yes, then what it means is after a user enrolls his device and he, let's just say, logs off and logs in again into the device, before he actually goes into the control alt del screen and before he provides his username and password, he is going to see a enrollment status page which is going to show him the status of the installation. Which is going to show him the status of the application and the profile which is getting installed, as in how much percentage of the application has been installed. If there were 5 applications installed, it will show that 3 of 5 installed, 4 of 5 installed, 5 of 5 installed. So it's just going to give him a status. If I do a yes over here, then it is going to give me that it has few more options which we can customize, as in uh, for how long it is going to get stuck at the enrollment status page. If I say 120 minutes, then page show custom message when an error occurs. Let's just say that there was an application which the admin has made available to the end user. The end user enrolled and the installation of that application failed. In that case, uh, if I do a yes, then a custom message will be displayed like contact local IT. I'm going to show you guys later on how exactly to deploy those applications, but at this point of time, let's just presume that we have already created some applications and deployed it to the end users during enrollment. Allow users to collect. If we do a yes, the users will be able to browse through the device and will be able to collect the event logs. And the most important one, block device use until all apps and profiles are installed. What this means is the end user experience would be like this. The end user is going to enroll his device. Once he's enrolled, let's just say that he reboots or he logs off and logs into the device. After the login, he will be able to see the enrollment status page, and the enrollment status page is going to block the device in a state of limbo, as in he will be able to see a status page showing the status of the installation of application and profile, but it won't let him skip it or continue it. He will be stuck at that screen. That is, it will do exactly what this verbiage is saying: block device use until all apps and profiles are installed. So until and unless the application is installed, he will not be able to actually go into the desktop of the device and start working, meaning end user will not be able to make use of the device unless and until his device is business ready. So if I do a yes over here, then it is going to ask us what is going to happen, whether the user can reset the device or not, and block device use until these apps are installed. So let's just say that the admin has provisioned 10 applications to the user, but we want that user should not be able to make use of the device until and unless 3 mandatory applications are installed. So let's just say that I am the admin. I have provisioned 10 applications to the end users, but I want that end user should not be able to use the device until and unless MS Office Suite is installed in the device. If MS Office Suite is installed, they should be uh, it should be okay for them to go ahead and make use of the device. But if MS Office is not installed, his device should be stuck in the state of limbo. So over here, then I'll have to have the ability of selecting that one application. So I will select on select app, and then over there I can select the MS Suite which has been provisioned to that user, or other applications which might or might not be provisioned to the users. These applications are something which has already been provisioned. I will show you guys later on how exactly to do it. But in short, in nutshell, this exactly is what the enrollment status page is. It is something which can be used in conjunction with Autopilot or can be used independently. It actually gives the user a status of the installation of application or profile when they're enrolling their devices, and the admin has the ability of locking down the device unless and until that application has been actually provisioned and installed on the device. Other than that, we have enrollment restrictions. So this enrollment restriction is same as what we saw inside the Android enrollment. So when we went into Android enrollment and when we went into corporate owned devices, uh, 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 no, I'm sorry, this is the wrong place. So I think we saw this. We have already seen this enrollment restrictions. So it has those two, like this was the enrollment restriction that we created, like if I don't want people to enroll iOS devices, then I will just create an enrollment restriction stating that, and I will just create an enrollment restriction stating that, and I will just assign it to a user group. And if I don't want user to be able to enroll more than 4 or 5 devices, then in that case what I'll do is I'll create a device limit restriction rather than device type restriction, and I will assign it to a user group. So that is something which we can make use of. Other than that, we have something called device categories. So device category, I have made a device category. Uh, Device category is something, let's just say that end users are enrolling their device. So during the enrollment, they are able to see 2 or 3 device categories which the admin has created from the portal. So the user has to check on one of those devices or one of those device categories, and only then he will be able to proceed. Let's just say, for example, um the use case for this would be, let's just say that our end users, let's just say that I'm the Intune admin and our end users are some from the help desk, some from let's just say some from the HR, and some from the finance. Okay, so what I want is when the users are enrolling their device should actually get tagged with the department they are from. Okay, because once the device is enrolled, there is no way for me to know whom that device belongs to unless and until I check their UPN and then I find out in my Excel sheet that where that user works in. So what I can do is I can create 3 device categories. So let's just say I create one called HR, and uh, in the description I can say this device belongs to the HR, and I'll just do a create. We don't have to assign it to anybody. All that needs to be done is I can create a HR, and then I can create one device category called FINANCE, finance, and this device belongs to finance. What this means is when the end user, any user from this tenant, when he enrolls any device, any mobile device, when he tries to enroll it, he will be able to see 3 device categories during the enrollment phase. One of them would be everything about Intune proprietorship, one would be HR, one would be finance, one would be help desk if I create one. Now the user has to select either of these device categories and then click on continue. If he doesn't have the option of skipping it, So unless and until he selects one of these and does a continue, his device will not get enrolled and his device will not show up to the admin. So this is a compulsory step and this is something which the user cannot bypass. So the end user will have to select this category, and once the device is enrolled, the device will show up over here under devices and under all devices. So once the device shows up over here, it will be tagged with uh, something called device category. So if I go to columns, I should have something called device category over here. So let me see here, category, yeah, there you go. So all the devices will be tagged with this. So over here you can see that the first two devices are unassigned and the last one is tagged with everything about Intune proprietorship, this device. So what it means is unassigned means that when these devices were enrolled, that category did not exist. So these devices were enrolled at an earlier time. So okay, let me just come back over here to device enrollment. So device category is something which the admin can set from his end, and the users can select a appropriate device category, which would help the admin identify what kind of device it is, what it might belong to. Again, a HR user can select the finance category and a help desk user can select the HR category. There is no one stopping them from doing it. It is, I mean, this is assuming that the end users are selecting the correct category. This is just something which is there for the admin to ease his access, just for him to identify whom the device belongs to. Again, the admin will be always able to see the UPN with which the device is associated and drill it down better. Okay, corporate device identifiers. This is something like when we enroll a device, that device either get that device gets tagged with a lot of things. Like, let me just show you guys. When I'm enrolling this device is getting tagged with its OS. What is the OS of this device? Its OS version, email address as in who has enrolled the device, and ownership and device category. So device category is something which is again optional if the admin has created a device category, and when the end user selects that category gets tagged with the device and the device ownership. So if it is a BYOD kind of a scenario, then the devices gets tagged with personal, and if it is a company owned device, then the device gets tagged as corporate. This again is something which helps the end user, not the end user, this again is something which helps the admin find out what kind of devices are that. Like for example, if it is a autopilot device, an autopilot device is something which always gets tagged as corporate, because autopilot is something which company is providing the end user. If it is a DEP device, a DEP device always gets tagged as corporate, because DEP is like company is providing that. It's bulk enrollment of iOS, company owned devices. Similarly, like over here, you can see that some devices are marked as corporate, some are personal. Let's just say that there is a device which the company purchased and it provided to the end user, and the end user has now enrolled it. Okay, so let's just say that that device got enrolled as personal. Now I want to change its ownership. So all I have to do is I have to click on that device, go to properties, and in the drop down I should have the option of changing it from personal to corporate. Similarly, I have the option of changing the device category as well, like these three categories. This device did not get tagged with any of these categories because at the time of enrollment none of these were created, but now they are. Therefore now it's giving me the option, so I can change it from personal to corporate, vice versa. I can select the category, and then it says that if the device is if it is corporate owned device, then Intune collects the phone number and the app inventory of the corporate owned devices. Before you save this device as corporate, confirm that your company owns this device. After you make this change, user of the device will be notified of the ownership change. I acknowledge this and then I can save it. There is another way of doing this. If I don't want to manually do it for each device, what I can do is I can go over here and I can go to device enrollment, and where we were earlier, and we can go to device identifiers and upload the IMEI number or the identifier of a specific device. So way to do that would be uploading a CSV file. All I have to do is I have to upload a CSV file with IMEI number or serial number. Once I upload that when, like for example, I have uploaded this device, I've uploaded IMEI number of this device. Whenever I enroll this device is going to by default get enrolled and tagged as a corporate device. Again, when a device gets tagged as a corporate or personal doesn't make much of a difference. It is just a tagging which is going to illustrate to the admin that this is a corporate device or a personal device. Just a tagging makes no difference. Policies are applied more or less the same way, and everything is more or less the same. Okay, so if you want to pre-populate some devices and make sure that okay, there are few devices which a company has purchased, rest all are personal, then you can enroll those devices a normal way. And for those corporate devices, just upload the IMEI or the serial number, and you can do this beforehand, before the devices are actually enrolled. And whenever those devices are come online and get actually enrolled, they will be tagged as corporate. Device enrollment managers will, as I was saying in the as I was showing in the device enrollment restriction, by default a user can enroll a maximum of 15 devices. Using a DEM account, a user can enroll a maximum of, I guess, somewhere around 100 devices. I'll have to check the documentation, but more or less a user can enroll around 100 plus devices using a DEM account. But then again, there are some there are, I mean, this is like for bulk devices. Let's just say for there is a kiosk device. Well, I mean, in kiosk also we can have a kiosk device wherein no user interaction is needed, or we can have a kiosk device wherein a user interaction is needed. If that is the case, I mean, more or less we will be using a DEM account to enroll shared devices or devices wherein, I mean, which we do not want to be tagged with a specific user, like kind of a shared device. There are some advantages of using a DEM account, some disadvantages. Advantages being that using one account, we are using only one account and enrolling 100 plus devices, meaning we are assigning only one license instead of assigning 100 plus EMS, E3 or E5 license. Disadvantage being that some of the functionalities are limited, as in if a device is enrolled using a DEM account, then the end user cannot unenroll it from his end. Only the admin can unenroll that device from the Intune portal. So these are some of the drawbacks. You can refer to the documentation for more insight into it. Audit logs, again, this is only going to log each and everything that is done by the admin on this portal. So if I go into device enrollment, uh, there is an audit log over here, as you can see. If I go to device compliance, there should be an audit log over here. There you go. And if I go to device compliance, again there is an audit log over here. If I go to devices, there should be an audit log over there as well. So what each blade has its own subcategories and an audit log. So whatever you do inside this blade from the portal gets gets logged in the audit logs. So this audit logs is for each and everything that is done by any Intune admin from this Intune Ibiza console related to device enrollment. If you want to see anything done under device compliance, you will have to click on device compliance and go to the audit logs under device compliance. Right now we are under device enrollment. So any and every user who has access to this console and has done any changes in the past 30 days will get logged over here. Like I created a device category named finance and HR, and I created enrollment restrictions named no iOS enrollment. Everything has been logged over here along with the appropriate time frame. Company portal abandonment is, let's just say that there are end users who are enrolling their devices, and during the enrollment there are many phases, like the device first get Azure deregistered, then gets enrolled, then it shows them the terms and conditions page, and then it shows them the platform screen, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are many phases. So let's just say that for some reason the end users are not going through with the complete process of enrollment, and the enrollment process is getting abandoned for some reason, then this company portal abandonment is something which actually shows that at which phase of enrollment the enrollment is failing. Let's just say, for example, that the end user downloaded the company portal application, installed it, signed into it, and then after signing into it, he has to click on next, and then uh, select the device category and make a few selections. Let's just say that the user just installed it, signed into it, and left the device like that for more than 30 minutes. Then in that case, the enrollment process will fail. Then, then at a specific, I mean, the that would be referred to as abandonment of the enrollment process. Similarly, if the user has not selected one of the mandatory device category and has exited the application, then again it would be referred to as abandonment of the enrollment process. So this screen actually tells us that at which phase the device the there is a failure of the enrollment process. So over here it says that 9 people have initiated enrollment, out of which one device has abandoned the enrollment. Therefore, the percentage of enrollment is 11%, which actually shows that when exactly this happened, like on 15th of January 2019, there was one device which failed it. It would also show that on which phase it happened. Like if I go over one, if I click on this device, the setup checklist is showing one, which means that this device uh, went through the device went through the abandonment phase during the setup checklist phase, as in when it tries to, I mean, one of the phases during the enrollment of a device is setup checklist. After that it shows the platform screen, after that it shows the term of use, and after that it shows the compliance and activation. So these are like different stages. So this is something which is like over here it actually shows that user may explicitly or implicitly abandon the enrollment wizards by selecting decline all, cancel, postpone, or a similar action that ends the wizard, taking more than 30 minutes to complete a section. So this is actually, in a way, let's just say that a lot of end users are having issues with their enrollment. So this is something which can give the Intune admin a hint as in at what phase the enrollment is failing, and then he can actually try to identify or guess what exactly might be the issue, where exactly is it failing in these 4 phases. He can sort it down with the date, he can sort it down with the number of devices that failed and at what level it failed, and probably narrow it down from there and find out if it's an Azure related issue, if there is something which the user is doing wrong, and so on and so forth. So guys, this is all about the device enrollment tab. So I guess that I hope that we now have a basic roundabout view of what needs to be done and what exactly all these blades talk about. Now guys, let's just talk about device compliance. So before I actually go into the device compliance, and after that we will be talking about device configuration, I would like to take a moment and explain the difference between device compliance and device configuration. Because if we go into device compliance, we just quickly give you an overview and then it might help us establish the difference. So I go into device compliance, and if I call it test compliance, and if I enter the platform as Android, then in the settings, if I go into system security, then I can set the password. So over here you can see that I can set the password as required and minimum password length as 10, right? If I do a OK, and if I do a OK, and then if I create, then this policy has been created. Now I can assign this policy. I can go into assignments and I can assign this test compliance policy to a security group. So this is our policy, test compliance for Android, created sorry, this is the one, test compliance for Android, created right now. This is the one we are talking about, test compliance Android, created on 22nd of January 2019. Now if I go into device configuration and go to profiles, and if I create a test configuration, and in the platform if I select Android, and over here if I select device restriction, and if I go into general, not general is not what I'm looking for. Let me come down here, and if I go to password, so over here we can see that it has password has required, minimum password length over here I can set as 10. Okay, all right, okay, create, and once it's created it will let us assign it. So I'm not assigning it to anybody right now, but for now test configuration has been created for Android on 22nd of January, right? So guys, right now what we have done is we have created a device compliance policy which for Android devices, which says that the devices should have a password of 10 letters, and we have created a device configuration policy which says that devices should have a password of 10 letters or 10 digits. Two different kind of policies with different names could have had the same name as well, can be assigned to the same security group. So over here I would like to explain the difference between compliance policy and configuration policy. We need to know the difference between what a device compliance policy does and what a device configuration policy does in order to understand when to use which one. Because as you just now saw, I made a device compliance policy and a configuration policy for password, and both of them looked exactly the same while we made it. So let me just show it to you if I have the deck with me. Okay, so a device compliance policy is processed first. The configuration policy is processed afterwards, meaning that once we are enrolling a device, once the device is enrolled, its device compliance is going to be evaluated first. Once its device compliance state is evaluated, as in it gets evaluated as compliant or not compliant, after that the further processing of configuration would take place depending upon the compliance state. Device compliance is something which is not compulsory. However, device configuration is something which is compulsory. So I'll explain the difference. Let us just take it in this way. So all right, let me just go to device compliance, and if I go to policies, my policy states, my device compliance policy states that my Android devices should have a password of 10 letters or 10 digits. So let's just say that I have a device. I am enrolling that device to this tenant using a username and password who has the EMS license assigned to it. Once the device is enrolled, that device will show up over here. right? If I go to devices and all devices, that device would show up over here. And if, let's just say this is my device, if my device has a password of 8 digit or 9 digit, or if my device does not have any password, meaning that if my device is not meeting the criteria of password that has been specified under the device compliance policy, then my device is going to be marked as non-compliant. So right now you can see that all the three devices are compliant. If I enroll my device which is not meeting to the compliance which has been set by the admin, then the device will still be enrolled, but after it is enrolled, it will be marked as non-compliant. So I hope that this gives us a brief about what exactly the compliance policy is. So let's just say that I am the admin and I have made two compliance policies. The first compliance policy states that my users should have a password of 10 digits. The second compliance policy states that all the Android devices should be running at a OS version of more than 8.0. Okay. If if there is an end user who tries to enroll his device using his credential, which is a valid credential with license assigned to it, irrespective of whether there is a password set on the device or not, irrespective of whether the password is less than or more than 10 digits as defined by the compliance policy, and irrespective of whether the OS version in that device is less than or more than 8.0 as defined in the device compliance policy, the device is going to get enrolled to Intune, to this tenant. Once the device is enrolled, the first thing that is going to get evaluated is the compliance of this device. So Intune is going to evaluate this device against all the compliance policy that has been associated with this device, and Intune will evaluate this device. If the device passes all the criterias, as in if the device has more than 10 digits of password, if the device has more than or equal to 8.0 of OS version, then the device will be marked as compliant. If not, then the device will be marked as non-compliant. But from the user's end, the device is in both the cases going to get marked as compliant, is going to get enrolled. Depending upon what the feature of the device is, the device is going to behave accordingly. However, guys, the working of device configuration policy is somewhat different. What happens in device configuration policy or a device configuration profile is that, let's just say that I am enrolling a Windows or an Android device, and the device configuration policy over here says that there is a device restriction which says that the password should be of minimum 10 letters or 10 digits. What is going to happen is, let's just say that I have a device and that device has 4 digit of password, right? So had it been only device compliance, then the device would have got enrolled and the device would have got marked as non-compliant because it would have not adhered to the compliance policy. However, if there was no compliance and only configuration policy, then when the device is enrolled and if there is no compliance, then obviously the device is going to get marked as compliant, because there is no compliance policy, only configuration policy saying that the device should have 10 digit of password. So after the device is marked as compliant, then the configuration policy is going to kick in, and then it is going to see that the configuration policy says that device should have a 10-digit password, but the device is having only 4-digit password. Then it is going to keep prompting the user the prompt will keep on happening until and unless the user actually goes to the settings of the device and changes the password to a 10-digit, meaning that the device configuration policy, as I said over here, is compulsory. while the compliance policy is not compulsory. If the compliance policy says that the device should have a 10-digit password and the OS version of 8, and the device actually is not having that, then the device is just going to get marked as non-compliant for the admins to see. However, if the configuration policy says that the device should have a password of 10 digit and the OS version of 8, and if the device is not adhering to any one of them, then the end user is going to keep on getting prompts unlimited number of times unless and until they actually do something about it. So they will not be able to seamlessly use their device unless and until they change their password or unless and until they upgrade their OS. So device configuration in a way is a compulsory thing. However, device compliance is something which is not compulsory. It is just something which marks the device as compliant or not compliant, and on the basis of that, the admin can see what kind of devices he has in the environment. Moreover, device compliance is for the admin to understand the state of the device. So looking at the device compliance, the admin can actually see and find out that out of all the 100 devices that the admin has enrolled in his tenant, how many devices are adhering to the compliance policy that has been set and how many are not. However, device configuration policy is something for the admin to enforce. If the user wants some setting to enforce on everybody, then it is like kind of a group policy. He would just enforce this policy on each and every person, and this is something which everybody will have to comply with. Okay, so I hope that now we have the differences between device compliance and device configuration clear. I wanted to illustrate that because in many of the settings, while you're making a policy, you will find that the attributes are exactly the same, but we need to identify what exactly are we looking for. Are we looking for a compliance or are we looking for a configuration? Just one more thing, as I said, once the device is marked as compliant or not compliant, it shows up over here. So when we go into devices and all devices, if the devices are compliant, the status of the devices shows up as compliant. If the devices are not compliant, the status of the devices shows up as not compliant. Now, this compliance state of a device can be used in conjunction with something called conditional access. So let me just go to the Azure portal again. So I'm going to portal.azure.com. Conditional access is something which is not there in Intune, but it is there in Azure portal. So over here you can see a conditional access blade as well, but conditional access is not exactly a part of Intune. It actually is part of Azure, but right now we have included it in Intune as well just to ease the access. So just so that the admin doesn't have to open a new blade again, we have included the users, groups, and conditional access uh, blade from the Azure portal to the Intune portal. Over here we have conditional access. But conditional access out of the box is not a feature of Intune, it's a feature of Azure. Okay, so if I go into conditional access and if I were to make a conditional access policy, let me just show you how exactly we will be using this device compliance policy. So let's just say that I have made over here, as you saw, that I have made a device compliance policy saying that all the Android devices should have a minimum password of 10 digit, right? This is the policy that I have made. Now I can use this device compliance policy in conjunction with conditional access. So the way to do that would be, I would be going to conditional access, creating on a new policy, and I'll be calling it password conditional access, and then I will be assigning it to a group. Let's just say that I am assigning it to select users and groups, and let's just say that in the users and group section I am selecting the ABC group. Okay, so I am selecting ABC group and I'm doing a select and I'm doing done, and over here I can select a cloud resource. So over here I can select any resource like Exchange Online, or any resource, any application which is there in the cloud. So this can only be applied on cloud applications. So like Office 365 Exchange Online. Let's just say I select that. I have selected the application. The condition is uh, 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 device platform. I'm applying it on configure. I'm applying it on Android devices. Just bear with me, guys. Let me just show you everything and then I will read it out to you. Let me see what. Okay. Client apps. Okay. Cancel. All right. Cloud apps. I have selected the cloud apps, and then conditions. In the conditions device platform, I am selecting Android, and I'm doing a done, and I'm doing a done again. And in the access control, I am doing a grant access, and I am doing a require MFA, require devices to be marked as compliant, and then select, and then create. So I just created a conditional access right now. So once this conditional access is created, okay, this conditional access is created, all I have to do is I have to assign it to a security group, and then it will be enabled. Right now it's not enabled. So now let me just open up this conditional access policy and just show it to you what exactly this conditional access policy states. This as the name suggests, conditional access policy puts a condition before a user can access something. Okay, so this conditional access policy puts a condition on the users present in the ABC group. It places condition upon this group when they are trying to access this application, that is the application that is present under Exchange Online, which in this case is the application onto which it has been targeted. So any user who's part of this group, when he's trying to access Exchange Online application from an Android device, which we have selected in the device platform, will be granted access only when his device is marked as compliant. So what we are doing is, under that device compliance, under that state of the device compliance, if the device is marked as compliant, we are using that attribute, and using that attribute we are determining whether a user will be having access to this cloud resource, as in to Exchange Online, or not. So this is exactly how we would be, because until now all the device compliance policy was doing was, it was not, I mean, if we compare device compliance to device configuration, so device configuration is not giving the user an option. It is enforcing the user to change the password or to upgrade the OS. Device compliance is not enforcing the user, it is just silently marking the device as compliant or not compliant in the portal. Now what is the use? The first use is that it tells the admin what kind of devices he has in the environment, what is the percentage of compliant and not compliant devices he has in the environment. And the second use is that the device compliance attribute of a device can be used in conjunction with something called conditional access, and then we can grant or prohibit access of users onto cloud applications. And this is exactly how we would be doing. So you can probably go through this policy and go through the conditional access documentation, which would give you more insight into this. But this is something how we would be using the device compliance parameter of a device in conjunction with the conditional access. Therefore, if let's just say from this Android device, I was trying to, let's just say all these three were Android devices, and from any of these Android devices I was trying to access Exchange Online or my O365 mailbox, I would be able to access it. But if the fourth device is marked as non-compliant, and if I were to access my email, it would give me an error saying that your device is not compliant, and please make these changes. After that only you will be able to access this resource from this device. So that is how a device compliance would ideally work. So let me just show you the other features of device compliance and what are the kinds of. So let me just create another device compliance policy. So let me just call it test 2 compliance policy. And this policy, selecting a platform is something mandatory. So if I'm making a device compliance policy, the policy has to be targeted onto either a device which is enrolled as Android, or is enrolled as Android Enterprise, or is enrolled as iOS, Mac, Windows 8.1, Windows 10, whatever the case may be. So if I'm making one for iOS, then it has got some different settings. If I'm making one for Windows, it might have some different settings. If I'm making one for Android Enterprise, it might have some different settings, and if I'm making one for Android, it might have some different settings. So let's just say I make one for Windows 10 and later. So if I'm clicking on Windows 10 and later, and then in the platform, then in the settings, I have these options, these categories, which have further some settings inside of it which can be configured. So let's just take a look at each of them. Device health. Require BitLocker. If I do require BitLocker to be enabled on the device, so the devices need to have BitLocker enabled in them, and enabled in the device. If the BitLocker is not enabled in the device is going to be marked as non-compliant. Same thing goes with secure boot, code integrity. We can enable any of them, any or all of them. Device properties, let's just see what's there inside of it. So minimum OS version, again for Windows 10 we can put up the minimum OS version. Major minor build revision, okay, this is the operating system version, this is the format it has to be in. The maximum OS version, minimum OS version for mobile devices for Windows 10 for mobile devices again, and valid operating system builds. So this is like if we want to make sure that all the devices which are less than a specific OS version, let's just in case of iOS, if the version is less than 10, if I only want compliant iOS devices which are more than 11 or 12.1.2 or 12.1.1, then I can set it up accordingly. System security password, if I want that all the devices should have a password, should not have a simple password, should have a alphanumeric password type, should have a password number of, should have at least two non-alphanumeric password, should have password expiry date of, let's just say, uh, 40 days, and whatnot. So what this means is, if the device is not adhering to any of these parameters, if the device does not have a password, or if the device has a password but does not have a simple password, or if the device has a does not have a simple password, but I mean there is no alphanumeric password, or if there is less than two alphanumeric characters, or if the password is more than 40 days old, if it is like an and of all these parameters. So if the device is not adhering to any of these parameters, the device is going to get eventually marked as non-compliant in the portal. So that's pretty much there in system security. Under device health, uh, system security, we have configured 4 of them. Windows Defender ATP, more or less the same thing, self-explanatory. The defender ATP require the device to be at or under the machine risk. Okay, so it's asking at what level of ATP should the device be. Should it be at clear, low, medium, high, and depending upon which level the device is at, the device is going to get marked as compliant or not compliant accordingly. So, all right, let's just take a look over the iOS ones real quick. Okay, I think something opened up. Okay, this is for the iOS one, and then iOS compliance policy require mobile devices to have a managed email profile. Device health is jailbroken. So if my devices are jailbroken, if the iOS device is jailbroken, then the device is going to get marked as non-compliant, which is something which most of the organization used. Again, the same thing, device ATP, and which again can be set accordingly. Device properties, let's just see what do we have. We have a minimum OS version, maximum OS version, minimum OS build version, maximum OS build version. System security would probably be having the passwords. So let's just take a look. Yes, again, it has the password, simple password blocked, minimum password, required password type, more or less the same thing. So this is exactly how device compliance is going to work. So I hope that this helps us understand what exactly device compliance is. Whatever setting we set up over here helps the Intune portal determine the compliance attribute of a device. So once the device is enrolled, the compliance attribute of the device, whether the device is going to be compliant or not compliant, is judged by that device compliance policy. And depending upon this compliance attribute, we can make use of something called conditional access and then restrict users access or allow users access. Okay, so this is wherein we will be making a device compliance policy. If we go to location, then I believe this is wherein we will be uh, creating a location service. Nope, this is something else. Let's just, okay. Uh, Monitor, okay, this again is showing us all the devices that are there in the tenant that are enrolled and which of these devices are compliant, which are not compliant. We can run a search over here with the IMEI serial number, UPN, device name, etc. It will, and this column is going to show us the devices without any compliance policy assigned to them. So if I have any device which do not have any compliance policy assigned, those devices are going to show up over here. So these are all like monitoring tabs which shows the status and like how many devices have a compliance policy assigned to them, is active, enrolled users exist. So it's like showing up a tabular view which we can probably export from here, and then we can always go to the audit logs, and whenever we are making a compliance policy, like we just made a compliance policy right now, so anything which we do in this blade, this device compliance blade, anything which an Intune admin does in this blade from the Intune portal is something which is going to get logged over here. Okay, so then we have compliance policy settings. So so if there is a device which is not having any compliance policy assigned to it, if if you want those devices to be marked as non-compliant, then you have to set this as non-compliant. If the devices without any compliance policy, if there are devices which do not have any compliance policy assigned to them, and by default you want to mark them as compliant, then this is what you will be uh, setting over here. Enhanced jailbreak detection, this is something which you set on from here, and compliance status validity period is for 30 days. So so let me see if I can show you guys this or not. Let me just go to a device. This is a device which I have enrolled, and if I want to see the compliance policy that is uh, taking effect on this device, because I've got 4 or 5 compliance policies, right? I don't know which compliance policy is hitting which device. Let's just say I've got 4 compliance policy for Android device. Now I need to know that which compliance policy is hitting this device. Then I would have to go to the device compliance tab, and then I'll see over here. So over here I have not assigned any policy, any custom made policy. Therefore, the built-in device compliance policy is the one that is taking effect on this device. So built-in compliance policy checks only these three statuses, that is whether the enrolled user, that is the user who has enrolled the device, whether that user exists or not and has a compliance policy assigned or not, and whether the device is active or not. Right, so that is pretty much about the device compliance parameter. Now let's just roll over to the device configuration policies. So let's just quickly scoot over to the device configuration blade, and over here, as we have already seen, we can, just like we were making a device compliance policy, we would be making a device configuration policy. Just the difference being that device configuration is something which is a mandate and which the device has to comply with. So if it's password or OS or anything like that, the device is going to keep on prompting unless and until the user takes the necessary action. So the way to create it would be, we'll create on click on create profile, and then let's just call it test device configuration policy, and description is something optional, and then platform, again the same options. If I select on, let's just say, iOS, then these are the device these are the different kinds of device configuration policy that we can make, and I'm going to walk you through all of them. The features keep on increasing. I mean, earlier the profile types were around 5 or 6, now we have a lot of them. So let's just take a look. Let's just start with device features. So device features is something which has recently been added, and over here you can see that some of them says that supervised only. So if the device is supervised, as in if it's a DEP device, only in that case these policies are applicable. Other than that, if the device is not supervised, then most of these device features cannot be made use of. Device restriction, we have already seen that. If we go to general, then let's just take a quick look. Share usage of data, we can block it. Screen capture, we can block the screen capture. If it is blocked, then user, when they're trying to take the screen capture, I believe in case of iOS, we have to click the lock button and the volume up button. It's one of the ways of taking screenshot. You can take that from the control center as well. So if you try to do that, the screenshot will not be taken automatically. If you take it from the control center as well, that option will not be there because it is grayed out because of device restriction policy. Similarly, there are other settings as well. You can go through all of them. Wallpaper modification, over here you can see that supervised only. Block wallpapers from being changed. Block app removal. Again, a lot of them are for supervised only. These are new features, but the common used ones can be used for any of them. So that's there. In the general, there are a lot of them, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is the general gist of it. Let's just say again the password one, as I've already stated, uh, against the compliance policy, which is just going to mark the device as compliant or not compliant. I would like to repeat, this is actually going to keep on keep on prompting the user unless he removes the simple password, because the simple password is blocked, like 1234 or 1111. And if I am enforcing a numeric password, then the number of non-alphanumeric characters should be 1, minimum password length should be 10. So even if the user is entering a 9 characters password, it will keep on prompting him saying that you need to change the password. And then fingerprint unlock, we can block it, or uh, passcode modification, I don't know what exactly this is. Block passcode from being added, changed, or removed. Okay, so logged screen experience, how and what exactly is going to come up if when the screen is logged. So control center access, when the device is logged, it can be blocked. Notification access, wallet notification today view, while block access to today view when the device is logged. Okay, so as you can see here, it's like kind of verbose. It's giving us access to a lot of the device features, and and it's letting us access a lot of them. App Store, we can block the App Store as well. So if I'm pushing a device restriction policy and I want that the end user should not be able to install any application, install any application from App Store, all I'll have to do is I'll just have to block the App Store, and that's just it. Password to access App Store, we can require a password as well. In-app purchases can be blocked. Explicit iTunes music can be blocked. So there are a whole lot of them. So if you want to block anything on the iOS device or on the Android device or any kind of device, this is the place where you would do it. Because obviously if you want to block something, it has to be a device configuration policy and not a device compliance policy. You don't want the users to have an option of either blocking it or not blocking it. If you want it to be blocked, it has to be a device restriction policy, right? And then again, we can just scroll down and see what else do we have. I think we have something for wireless as well, connected devices, cloud and storage, kiosk, Safari. So if we go into Safari, let's just see what's over there. We can block Safari, or we can autofill. Safari can be blocked or not configured. Cookies can be allowed, cookies can be allowed or can be blocked, and then pop-ups can be blocked. So yeah, there are a lot of settings out there which you can play with. So that's therefore device restriction. So using device configuration, okay, so when till now I have been talking about device configuration as something which is restrictive, but that's just not the case. Let's just say that we have an Android device or an iOS device which has been freshly enrolled, and after the device is enrolled, I want to make the user experience as seamless as possible. For that, we can use something like a device configuration profile. So yes, one of the things that we can do is we can set a password of 10 digit, and we can block the app store. That is something which we can do. Other than that, we can push a email profile. So usually when a user gets a fresh device, a brand new device, enrolls it, after that he will have to set the email client on his device. If he has enrolled, if he has downloaded, I mean if he has the native mail client in his device, he will have to configure it. He will have to provide his username and password and the mail server and whatnot and whatnot. Over here, if I push a email profile to the device, then depending upon whatever the address of the mail server is, whether that is Exchange Online or Exchange On-Prem or whatever the cases may be, the mail uh, the mail in that the mailbox in that device, or the mail configuration in the device, can be configured by pushing a mail profile. So the user will not have to configure it from his end. It will get The device will get this profile or get auto configured, and it will be ready to go. A user will just open up the application and he will be magically having access to all the emails. Similarly, if let's just say that we have a on-prem setup. Okay, so we have a domain controller, we have a certification authority, we have a CA. Okay, and we have got some iOS devices, and we want to push some certificate from our CA to this iOS or to this Android or to this Windows laptop. Now the challenge here is that our CA is in the intranet, it's in our domain, but our laptop or our mobile device or our iOS phone or our Android phone is in the internet. So there has to be a way by which we can move the certificates from our intranet to the internet. That is something which can be used in that can be used via device configuration profile. So we can use something called a PKCS certificate or a SCEP certificate, and using that, or a trusted root certificate, and using that we can push certificates. So if we are pushing a trusted root certificate, what needs to be done is we upload a .cer over here, and we assign it to a user group, and that .cer gets deployed to that user group. As simple as that. If we are pushing a PKCS or SCEP, then we have to put some infrastructure in place. Like if we are doing let's just say a PKCS certificate, then in that case we will have to provide the name of our certification authority server, that is our on-prem, the name of our, the friendly name of the CA, the name of the template against which the certificate is going to be issued to the mobile devices. But at the end, what is going to happen is our end mobile devices on the internet are going to get a certificate from our certification authority in the domain in our intranet using this profile. So this is something which we can make use of. So we can push an email profile, or we can push certificates, whether that is a trusted certificate which is uploaded in the portal, or a SCEP or a PKCS certificate which is issued by our CA. We can use a VPN profile. So if we want to push a VPN profile just like an email profile, again that needs to be configured over here. Earlier we did not have so many options. Now we have a whole bunch of options over here for VPN, and we also have Wi-Fi. So if we want to push a Wi-Fi profile from here, we can use a Wi-Fi profile. That Wi-Fi profile can be used in conjunction with a certificate. So if I want to use my Wi-Fi profile in conjunction with a certificate, so what I'll be doing is network name SSID connect automatically enable, and then EAP type would be EAP TLS, proxy settings would be okay. So over here I will have to link it with the certificate that I have selected in the previous state. So you can refer to the documentation for that, but the point that I'm trying to make is if I have selected the correct configuration, then the end user experience is going to be something like this. The end user is going to unbox a fresh device which has never been used before. He is going to just power it on, connect to the internet, or obviously the device needs to have access to the internet, right? The device needs to be connected to the internet, and then install and then get the company portal application, install the company portal, log into company portal, enroll the device. Once the device is enrolled, all these things are going to get automatically pushed to the device. So the email application is going to get pushed to the device. I mean, the email profile is going to get pushed to the device. The device restriction profiles are going to get pushed to the device. So if the password is not meeting, or if the OS is not of the level which the admin wants it to be, it's going to keep on prompting the user. It's going to push a SCEP or a PKCS certificate which will get issued from your on-prem CA to the device. It's going to push a Wi-Fi profile as well, and this Wi-Fi profile can get authenticated using this SCEP or PKCS certificate which our on-prem CA has issued. So these all can be used in conjunction and then made use of. So this is just a basic roundabout of what we will be using a device configuration profile with. Let's just take a look over Windows 10. And over here in Windows 10 you can see that we have got a lot more device configuration type. We have something called administrative template. Administrative template is something like a group policy. So if you take a look over here in the administrative template setting, in the administrative template properties, it would look exactly like what we see in case of group policy. So if I go into settings, and if I go into, let's just say, if I want to allow file downloads, allow font downloads, allow cut copy paste, allow meta refresh, we have a lot of things for Internet Explorer. So I mean, this is exactly like group policy. It is targeting a specific content, like it's going into Windows component and then Internet Explorer, Internet control panel, security page, restricted site zones. So this is something which has actually been recently added. You can just go through this and find out what exactly this template is for. But I just wanted to show you guys and let you know that this does exist. So other than that, we have something called domain join. It is still in preview. So if let's just say that I have a Windows 10 laptop, and I want that laptop to get joined to my local on-prem domain, that is also something which is feasible. We will have to push a profile from here. There is some other configuration that needs to be done to facilitate that. We have to install a connector so that the device knows how to contact the domain, which domain to connect to. But yes, this is something which is still in preview. Please refer to the documentation for that. Edition upgrade is also there. So if I click on edition upgrade, it will let me upgrade the edition. Let's just say if I'm running on Windows 10 Education Edition, I want to upgrade it to Windows 10 Enterprise, or if I want to upgrade it to any specific version, or I mean any specific edition of Windows, and this is something which I'll have to push Windows edition upgrade and mode switch for Windows 10, and then I can push a kiosk profile as well. So kiosk profile is like something, let's just say that I have a device and that device has to be used as a kiosk device, as in like something which we have, let's just say in a theater or something like that. There is only one application which has to be used for barcode only, and there has to be no user sign in or something like that. Anybody should be able to walk up to that kiosk and make use of it. So this is what needs to be pushed. In case of that, we can use a single app kiosk or a multi-app kiosk. We can determine the application that has to be used in that kiosk. In single app kiosk, only one application will be used, full screen kiosk, and we can determine the application, probably a web browser or something like that. So other than that, SCEP PKCS is there, Wi-Fi education profile, custom profile is also there. We can push our own custom XML. Identity protection is something over here. We configure the Windows Hello for Business. That is also something which can be configured. So I mean, this is just a basic roundabout view of device configuration profile. There are so many things which can be done by a device configuration profile. I'm just skimming through all of them because I don't want this nugget to be very long. But yes, this exists there. Please refer to the documentation for more details. We can also push PowerShell scripts as well. So all we have to do is we have to click over here on the PowerShell scripts. We have to click on add. We have to enter my test PowerShell script, and then enter a script which is optional, and then we have to upload a file over here. We can upload a PS1 file which is going to again get delivered to the devices. It's going to run with the logged in credential, or it's going to run with a system account. And yeah, this is, I mean, ideally how a PowerShell script would run, just like running a PowerShell script remotely on users, remotely on devices. We can run a PowerShell script from here. Obviously, this is applicable only on Windows 10 devices, not on iOS or Android. And then eSIM cellular profiles, it is something which is still in preview and I haven't messed with as of now. Assignment status, again, it is going to show all the profiles that are out there that I have created, the kind of the profiles. These are all device configuration profiles, but under device configuration we can make a trusted certificate or an identity or a PKCS or a device restriction or a kiosk or any kind. So it's showing that the name of the profile, the type, and if any of them has errors, device which are assigned to them, if there are any devices which are under conflict, or if there are any devices which are pending, or if there are any devices which have succeeded, and if there are any devices onto which it is not applicable. For example, if I'm applying Windows Hello for Business on, let's just say VM. So I believe it might not work on a virtual machine because it doesn't have a TPM chip. So it would say that it's not applicable. So I mean, it's just showing the assignment status. Audit logs, again, this is the audit log for anything that is done with the device configuration profile by the admin from the Intune portal. So this is the admin side logging, not the end user side logging. So if I, like just now I made on the 22nd and on the 23rd I have made a test configuration and a test device configuration profile policy. So I've made two policies. So that is what it shows up over here. If I click on that, it gives me more information. The information is in GMT. It says that it has been initiated by this user, the user who has logged in, saurav@nuggetlabs.com, what he has done, the object ID, what he has modified, whatnot. And then it has devices with restricted apps. I don't know what is that about. And then it has device connectors. So as I said that if I want a scenario wherein I have an on-prem CA and it needs to issue certificate to my iOS or Android devices which are there on the internet. So the certificate has to travel from the intranet to the internet. So it happens via something called a certificate connector. So I install a connector in one of the on-prem servers, and this works as a mediator or the gateway. So using this gateway, the certificate first comes from my CA to the Intune portal, and from the Intune portal or the connector, it goes to the end device. This is wherein we will be installing a connector. All that needs to be done is we need to click on add, download the connector from here, install it on a server, and then log in to the server, log into the connector using one of the crowd credentials, and then it will show up as active. I have done nuggets on PKCS and SCEP. You can refer to that, which will tell us about how exactly to set up this connector and how exactly to work with a SCEP or a PKCS profile. So that's about the device configuration profile. Until now, we have gone through device enrollment, compliance, configuration, and devices tab. Now let's just talk about software updates. So under software updates, we have got two things: Windows 10 update ring and update policies for iOS. Windows 10 update ring has got to do with the patching of Windows 10 machines. There's only one thing that we need to keep in mind. Unlike patching that was done by SCCM, or unlike patching which was done by, let's just say, conventional on-prem tools like Shavlik or Lumention or Ivanti, which gave us the option of selecting the patches which Microsoft released. Let's just say that I want MS15-0111 patch to be installed on all the machines and not the other patches. For example, we had that option in SCCM or Ivanti or Lumention or Shavlik. We don't have that option in Intune. From Intune, we can only select when the patching is going to take place. Which patches are going to get installed, we don't have visibility over that via Intune. This is something which we need to keep in mind. So if we have devices wherein we want to be very restrictive and select the patches that needs to be installed, probably making use of Intune is not the right approach. Probably we should make use of some other tools. But if we have Windows 10 end machines and we know that whatever patches Microsoft is going to release are trusted patches, we trust them, then using Intune, we can select when that update is going to happen. So over here, we will be making something called an update ring. So let's just call it a test Windows 10 update ring. So as the name suggests, it's a Windows 10 update ring, therefore it's applicable only on Windows devices. We'll have to go into the settings, and over here we actually configure when exactly the update is going to take place. Whether this is the channel, if we select Windows Insider, then the update take place faster. If we select Windows annual channel or targeted, then once the update is released publicly, only then that update is applicable. We can select whether we want to update the drivers as well, or we don't want to update the drivers. We have the ability of choosing the deferral period. So deferral period is the amount of time for which we want to defer the update, as in if we don't want the update to happen and we want to block the updates, then we can make use of that. So we can defer the updates for a maximum of 30 days. We can defer feature updates for a maximum of 30 days. We can set features update uninstall period from 2 to 60 days. We can actually choose when exactly the update should happen. So we can select automatic update behavior, whether it should notify on download, whether it should auto install at maintenance time, reset to default auto install and reboot without end user control, auto install and restart at scheduled times. It has got lot of a lot of options, as in how exactly we would want the update to get downloaded and update to get installed, and how exactly the end user experience should be, the behavior, whether you want it to happen every week or whether you want to happen first week of every month, how exactly you want that to happen, scheduled install day, you can select the day, scheduled install time, you can select at what time it can happen, restart checks, whether you want to allow it or skip it, block user from pausing Windows update. If you block it, then the users will not be able to do that. If you allow it, then the users will be able to block the pausing of updates. Require users approval to restart outside of working hours, we can require it or we cannot configure it. And then, I mean, it has got a lot of verbose options which actually talks about when the update should happen and how the update should happen. Just keep in mind, guys, that Windows 10 update ring cannot help us decide which update should happen and which update should not happen. So if you're looking off for that kind of ability, then probably make use of go with the conventional approach like SCCM or any other Microsoft product. But if that is not the requirement, if we are trusting the update that is coming from Microsoft channel, then we can make use of Windows 10 update ring. We don't have to manage any other third-party software and purchase licenses for that. Similarly, it goes with iOS. We can create an iOS update policy, and over there we can determine when exactly that update is going to take place. So that's about software updates. Now let's just talk about client apps. In the client app section, we can push applications. So if I go to apps, if I want to push any application to a device, this is how I would be doing it. So once I push, so right now I have pushed these many applications to this device, let's just say. So once I push any application to a device, or let's just say to a user. So if I have pushed an application to a user and that user enrolls a device, so once he has enrolled his device, he will be able to see that application in the company portal app. So once the end user opens up the company portal application and he goes to the apps section, he will be able to see this application displayed. And if he clicks on that application, he will be able to download that application. And if he wishes to download it, it's up to him. So there are only two things that we need to keep in mind while pushing an application. So just keep in mind, this is the section from wherein you will be pushing an application. While pushing an application, just need to keep two things in mind. First is the app type. What kind of application you want to push. So let's just say that it's an Android device, right? We want to push application to an Android device. So I'm going to select Android. So to an Android device, we can push two kinds of application. First is a store app and second is a LOB app. LOB app is something, if let's just say that we have a MSI file of an application, we can just select an LOB app from here, and all we'll have to do is just upload that MSI file. So all I'll have to do is I'll have to click over here and then locate an MSI file and just upload it over here. Just make sure that we are not uploading exe. Exe is not a supported platform. So for for Android or for Windows or for iOS, if we want to upload a LOB application, an application for which we have an MSI, an application which our organization has custom made for our users, then we'll have to go into LOB apps and just upload that MSI. If we have to make use of exe, then we can make use of Win32. This is still in preview. Please refer to the documentation on how exactly to make use of Win32 application. But for store application, let's just say that there is some application. Let me just show it to you how exactly to push a store app. So in the app type, I have selected store app Android, and in the app information, I am going to name the application. So let me just name it as today's demo for store app hyphen, let's just say Facebook. I know it's a very big name, but let's just roll with it. The description is mandatory, and the publisher, we can call it anything. I'm calling it Facebook. And then the App Store URL. So let me just go to Google, and then we are doing it for Android, right? So Android Play Store Facebook. So it will download us to play.google.com eventually. I don't need to actually type Facebook over there. All I can do is I can go to shop. I mean, I can actually go to play.google.com, which is the Play Store for Android. And over there, I can search for the application. So over here, I'm looking to push an application called Facebook. So I have to click on Facebook and then copy the URL. Okay, this is the URL that I want. So I'm just going to copy that URL, go to the App Store URL, and then over here you can see that it says enter a valid URL similar to https://play.google.com. So it's giving us a hint. So if I paste this URL, it gives us a green tick, meaning that the URL is correct. Minimum operating system version, if I do a 8.0, category is optional, and then display this as a featured app, yes. And that's it. I can select a logo as well, and then I just have to do a OK. I'm just actually going to walk you through this and tell you what exactly this is going to do. Let me just add it, and then let me just assign it. So the application has been created with the name today's demo store app, today's demo for store app. Now all I have to do is I have to assign it. So I'm assigning this application to I'm assigning this application to available for enrolled devices. And I am selecting a group. Select group to include. And I'm going to select ABC. Okay. So I just selected ABC over there. I just did a OK. I just did a OK. I just did a save. It has been created. The name is today's demo. So let me just search for it with the name TOD. Yeah, there you go. This is the application today's demo for store app Facebook. So what is going to happen is, what I actually did was I went to the Play Store and I copied the link for Facebook from this Play Store, and I created an application, and in the properties of that application I actually gave that link for the Play Store, right? I gave that link to the Play Store. So what is going to happen is, when the end user enrolls his device who has been targeted by this application, who has been targeted by the assignment of this application, when the end user enrolls his device, he is going to go to the company portal app after enrollment. And when he opens up the company portal app, there is a apps section in the company portal. So when he goes to that apps section, he will be able to see an icon of Facebook over there. Okay, because over here I have selected display this as a featured app in company portal. So display this as a featured app in company portal, it says over there. Therefore in the apps section, this application shows up over there as a featured app. Okay, and if we have selected any logo, then that logo will also show up over there. Okay, when the user clicks on that application, he gets redirected to this URL in the Play Store. So in his App Store or in his Play Store, he will be redirected to this application, All he will have to do is click on install, and that application will get installed on his device. So what is the use of this? The use of this is it just makes the user experience a little less clumsy. What I mean by that is, let's just say that I'm a new employee, I am a new user, I have just joined the organization, I've just got a device, I've just got a laptop or an Android device or an iOS device, and I don't know what are the possible applications I might need or I might not need. The IT admin knows, the Intune admin knows. So what he can do is he can feature 10 or 15 applications, LOB applications or store applications, which the Intune admin thinks that the end users might need. So he is going to provision this 10 or 15 applications to the end users. The end users, when they enroll their device and when they go to the app section, they will be able to see this 10 or 15 applications. Depending upon their choice, if they want to install all the 15 applications right away, they can install it exactly at that moment, or whenever they feel like installing that application, whenever they feel the need of making use of that application, they can go to the app section and install that application. All that does is that it makes the end user experience less clumsy, as in the end user will not have to go to the app store or play store and search for the right application and install it from there. They can still do it, but this will just make the user experience less clumsy. That is one thing. The second thing which I want to tell you guys is, when we were at the assignment, what I selected was, if I make one more selection, let's just say that this is the first group I have assigned to ABC. I want to assign it to one other group. So before I actually assign it to a group, it is asking me something called an assignment type. So first I selected available. There is another assignment type called required. If I select another group over here, I can make this app required for all users, all devices, or do this for a specific group. So I just want to do it for a specific group. Before I did it for ABC, let me just do it for, I have a group called LOL. So let me just assign it to LOL. Okay. Okay. So now I have got two assignments. One is this Facebook application is assigned to ABC group, and the second one is assigned to LOL group. The difference is that the ABC assignment is as available and the LOL assignment as required. What it means is that if I am the end user, I am running my Android device. If I am part of the ABC group, then after my device is enrolled, after I go into the apps section, I will be able to see the Facebook application over there. If I wish to install it, I'll click on it, get redirected to the App Store or Play Store, and it will start getting downloaded. It will start getting installed. However, if I am a part of the LOL group onto which the assignment type is required, then I as an end user do not have an option of whether I want to, of making the choice of whether I want to install it or whether I don't want to install it. As in, the end user will have to install this application. That is, if I'm part of the LOL group, I will have to install the Facebook application. So once I enroll the device, in case of iOS, it is going to keep on prompting me, just like it keeps on prompting us in case of a device configuration profile or a device restriction. It is going to keep on prompting us and ask us to click on allow. If we keep on clicking on deny, the pop-up will keep on coming up. And just when we click on allow, the a download of the application will happen seamlessly at the backend. It will get installed, it will get downloaded as well as installed. In case of Android, it just gives us a notification. It doesn't even prompt us to click on allow or deny. It will just notify, and the application downloading as well as the installation will happen automatically at the background. So that is the difference between deploying an application as available or required. If I as an admin want that the end users should have Outlook and should have Excel on their devices, it should be a mandate. They should not have any other option. Then I would be pushing Excel as a required app. However, if there are some applications which I want to push as available, then the end users will have an option of either installing it or not installing it, or installing it as per their convenience. Not with the case with an required application. Now let's just talk about, after the apps, the next thing which we have is app protection policy. So app protection policy is just like kind of a, if I may call it, a DLP, or a data leakage protection. So what app protection policy does is, let's just say that I have an Outlook application and I want that the user should not be able to copy data from Outlook to any other application. As in, I want to protect the data which is present in the Outlook application. In that case, I would be making use of something called app protection policy, and this is wherein we will be configuring it. So let me just call it app protection policy dash Outlook. So this is the name for that. The description, we have to select a platform. Let me do iOS. I'm not selecting all applications. I am selecting app on Intune managed devices. Intune unmanaged devices is for MAM. We are doing MDM. So there are two approaches. One is mobile application management and one is mobile device management. Please refer to the documentation for difference between the two. So if we select on applications, we can select the application over here. So over here we should have something called Outlook. So over here, if I select Outlook and do a select and then go to settings, and then in the data protection, let me just configure it and then I'll exactly tell you how exactly it's supposed to work. Allow app to receive data from other app? No. If no, allow app to receive data from other app? None. Prevent save as? Yes. Select which storage it can be saved to, OneDrive for business, and then allow app to transfer data to other app? None. Prevent iTunes and iCloud backups? Yes. And then functionality, okay. Let me do only this. I'm just going to do a okay. I'm just going to do a okay, and I'm just going to do a create app protection policy Outlook. So what this policy is going to do is, once I assign it, any person, any user who in his iOS device, when he is not any person who is a part of this assignment group, when he is in his iOS device, because this app protection policy is targeted on iOS platform, when he is in his iOS device and when he is using the Outlook application, because we have targeted it on Outlook only, right? So when he is using the Outlook application, when he launches the Outlook application and when he tries to copy data from Outlook application to any other application, like, because he will be blocked to do so, because over here we have selected the criteria allow app to transfer data to other apps as none, meaning that Outlook is not allowed to transfer data to any other application. Okay, so if I open up an Outlook application and just do a copy paste of, and I just do a copy of the subject line of an email or the body of an email or from anything in an email, and I open up a notepad or any other application and do a paste over there, I will not be able to paste the data. It will say that your organization is blocking this access, right? We will not be able to move data from one application to the other application. If we want that from Excel, we should not be able to paste data onto Outlook, that is the vice versa, then we will have to block this one, allow app to receive data from other apps. So all this is doing is app protection policy is doing is it is actually determining how exactly our applications are going to behave. So this policy is targeting not the device but the application, and these are the applications that we can target using our app protection policy. So these applications, we refer to them as MAM aware application. So these are the applications which understand the app protection policy of Intune. So these are the applications which are there out of the box. If let's just say that we have a LOB application onto which we want to apply a MAM policy, then there are two ways of doing that. We can either get our hands on that application and then app wrap it using something called the app wrapper tool, which makes the application MAM aware, or we can develop that application using the Intune SDK if we have access to the source code. So, I mean, this is the app protection policy. In short, this is what we can do using app protection policy. Similarly, if you want to configure an application, configure the behavior of an application, that is something which we will be doing under app configuration policies. We have something called app selective wipe, wherein we can create a wipe request. And in the monitoring section, again, it's just going to show us which licenses have been. We have something called a VPP or a volume purchase program. Again, like if we are purchasing a lot of applications in bulk, then for iOS devices, then that is referred to as VPP or volume purchase program. And then like, let me just show you guys. So I think I should have something set up. So over here in the app section, you can see that I have an Adobe Acrobat Reader, which is a iOS VPP, a volume purchase program app. The second one is the iOS Store app. So I have a VPP app as well as iOS Store app. I have a managed Google Play app, Find My Device, similar to that Facebook application which I created in front of you guys. I have a Android Store app as well. I have a managed Microsoft Store for Business app as well. So Microsoft Store for Business is something like VPP for iOS is same as Microsoft Store for Business for Windows. So so these are the, I mean, there are many different kind of applications that can be provisioned to the user, and the applications can be provisioned in various ways as well. They can be provisioned as a required application, they can be provisioned as an available, and depending upon that, the users get an option of making use of those applications, right? And then in the app install status, it is going to show us which applications has been installed on which devices. App protection status is going to show us which protection policy has been applied on which device and what has been protected. It's just going to give us a pictorial representation. Audit logs again will show us each and everything that has been done by an admin from this portal regarding client apps. So all those things which we have created over here, you can see that whatever we have created or whatever we have edited for today, that is 23rd of January, has got logged over here. VPP tokens, like just like for setting up Apple enrollment, we have to set up a APN certificate. Similarly for VPP, that is for volume purchase program, like if we have purchased a bulk of applications and we want to deploy it, we have to set up a token as well, just like an APN. So that is something which I have set up. If we click on create, then that is something which we can do again. The process is the same. We have to upload a file, we have to open the Apple VPP portal, download, login with our Apple ID, and then go to the business store and then log in with our Apple ID, and then download the token from there, upload it over here, and then give the permissions, sync it, and then it will be shown as active. So Microsoft Store for Business, company portal branding is something which we can configure. It's there in the Azure AD as well. Company portal branding is just like, it just shows up a company name and display name whenever we are enrolling a device. managed Google Play. This is for Android Enterprise. So Android, as I said, the difference between Android and Android Enterprise is, in case of Android Enterprise, it gives us more verbose option, right? So the way it happens is, what we do is we open up the Google Play Store from here. We sign in. So let me just sign in over here. So I hope I remember the password to this one. Oops, I think it's going to send a verification code. Nope, is there another way? Okay, so I mean, I think this has to be recovered. I don't remember the password for this. Uh, So, however, uh, what needs to be done is we need to go to the Google managed Google Play Store, and from there we need to approve an application. So once we approve that application shows up over here, and only that application can be delivered to the devices, to the Android enterprise devices. So the point that I'm trying to make is, for an Android device which is enrolled as normal Android, the end users have the ability of installing and downloading any application. But for an device which is enrolled as Android Enterprise, end user can go to the Play Store and install only those applications which the admin has approved from the portal. Therefore, it provides us more granular approach to speak with. Okay, so that is pretty much we would like to see. This is the Windows Store for Business portal. This is something which we can take a look over here. Not much to see over here. So I think we have already gone through the users and the groups. So these users and the groups, these two blades are something which are coming from the Azure AD, but we have inculcated it into the Intune as well, because we should, I mean, so that we don't have to switch between the tabs. Role is something which we can make use of as well. So uh, role is like, let's just say that we have a help desk group, right? And we don't want that the help desk user should be able to make use of everything in Intune. They should only be having the access of making a configuration profile or a compliance profile, or they should only have read only access, or they should have read write access only to a specific things. As in, if we want to delegate the control, in that case we can make use of this role. Okay, so by default we have a Intune administrator role. Other than that, we have this built-in roles as well. So if I click on profile and policy manager, and if I go into the permissions, it will show that these are the possible permissions, and for this role, for these permissions are enabled, and some permissions are enabled and some permissions are not enabled. So if we want to enable some permission, we can enable it. If we don't want to enable some permission, we don't need to enable it. The point that I'm trying to make is, by default, a Intune admin and a global admin is going to have all the roles. If we want a user who should not have all the roles but should have specific role, then what we can do is we can create a custom role, or we can use any one of these and restrict the usage. For example, if we have a lot of admins, out of those admins, some admins are from the help desk and we want the help desk admins to have limited access to the portal. Then we can add them to this Intune roles so that they will have a role of help desk operator only, and they will have limited access. I mean, when they are trying to go, like for device compliance, they will only be able to okay, audit data. Let's see what says in audit data. So like for device compliance, we can select on device compliance and do a create as no. So they will not be able to create a device compliance. They will only be able to read and update, right? So the point I'm trying to make is this Intune role is something that you can play with if you want delegated permission in your environment.
And guys, after the RBAC role, the last thing which I wanted to discuss, which I have added over in my favorites, is the troubleshoot blade. This is something which we can make use of as well. So the way we would be using it is over here, it gives us an option of select user to troubleshoot. So if I click on that and let's just say I want to troubleshoot Tom. Let's just say that Tom is one of the end users. He is having some issues, and we as an Intune admin have received a ticket and we want to troubleshoot Tom. So entering Tom's username or UPN over here is going to give us all the information regarding Tom in the tenant. So you would be able to see everything related to Tom in the single pane, or in the single view. We'll be able to see all the devices that have been enrolled by Tom, all the app protection policy that has been applied to Tom, and if there are any client apps that have been deployed to Tom, then it's going to show up over here. So like in my case, there are some applications for the Android devices which have been deployed to Tom as required. Some have been deployed to him as included. I mean some have been deployed to him as available. So it's going to show all the policies, like the apps that have been deployed. If I go to compliance policy, it's going to show whether the device, whether there are any compliance policy or not, whether the devices are compliant or not, whether there are any configuration policies deployed or not. So in this case, I have 2 devices that have been enrolled by Tom. 3 in fact. So one is Windows, one is iPad, one is Android, and the iPad actually has a SCEP profile deployed to it, and it is the SCEP profile is linked with the root profile. So when I go to the configuration policy, it actually is showing me what are the configuration policies that have been deployed, when was it deployed, and if there are any enrollment restrictions that would show up as well. And like in this case, they're the default ones. If there are any update rings and app protection policies, which there aren't any. So I mean, this pane would help us troubleshoot. I mean, if there is just one user who is impacted, then instead of going into all the tabs, instead of going to devices and then device enrollment, device compliance, device configuration, the apps, instead of browsing through all the blades one by one, if there is just one user or a couple of users who are impacted, we can probably start the troubleshooting from here as well, which is going to show whether the device over here, it's saying that the devices are compliant or not, and which member, which group the user is a member of. So Tom over here is a member of this group. If he's a part of multiple groups, then all the groups are going to be enlisted over here, and whether he has an Intune license assigned to him or not. So let's just say that, for instance, use case would be, let's just say the end user is reporting that he's not able to see one application, and he says that the application has been provisioned to him and he's a part of a specific group which is provisioning the application. So what we can do is, first we can check the group membership from here and see that whether he's actually part of a group or not, onto which the application has been targeted or provisioned, whether his device is compliant or not, whether he has an Intune license assigned or not, whether the device that he's talking about is enrolled over here or not, and whether it is targeted by that application or not, as in whether it is whether there is a app protection policy or client apps that has been targeted to that group the user is a part of. So this blade is something which we can make use of as well, which would help us in troubleshooting. So guys, that's pretty much it. I mean, the motive of this the motive of this training was just to provide 100-feet view and let everybody know that this exists. And then, I mean, depending upon the use case, you can probably go through my other tutorials as well, which would do a kind of a deep dive and help us understand how each functionality works. But as I said, on the 100-feet view, what we were able to discuss in this tutorial was we were able to find out what exactly the Ibiza console or the Intune console is, and how exactly we can access the Intune portal. What are the different URLs and different links to access the Intune portal, and then we talked about how exactly users and groups are present in the Intune portal. I mean, there is a possibility of creating the users and the groups on the cloud itself, or we have an ability of syncing it from the on-prem. So using the tool, as I said, like using Azure AD Connect, we can sync all our users from on-prem to the cloud, and hence we will be able to provision those users. So we talked about how we can see those users and groups and how to sync them. And then we talked about what are the prerequisites for users so that they can enroll their devices to Intune. So from a user's point of view, we need to make sure that the user has a EMS E3 or E5 license or an Intune license if he is not going to make use of Azure functionality. The admin has to make sure that the license is present. The admin has to make sure that the Mdm scope is set accordingly so that the user is able to enroll his device. And in case of iOS, the admin has to make sure that the AP insert has been downloaded from identity.apple.com and it has been uploaded over here, and that channel or that sync is established. There is no prerequisite per se for Windows and for Android. However, for iOS, there is a prereq, and there is one for Android for work as well, which needs to be set up so that the devices can get enrolled. As in, for Android for work, we will have to create a device type restriction and set it over there, because by default Android is set to blocked, and Android for work is set to blocked, and Android is set to allow. So for setting up Android, for facilitating Android for work enrollment, we will have to set that up. And for iOS, we will have to set up the APN. And if we want to make use of DEP or for bulk enrollment of iOS devices, then we will have to set up DEP as well. For Windows per se, we don't have to do anything for Windows enrollment. But if we want to make use of Autopilot and we want to customize the out-of-the-box experience, then that is something which the admin will have to set up. So we discussed that. And then we reviewed all the how we can actually see all the enrolled devices and the properties. So the way to do that is we have to just go to the devices, and then we just have to go to all devices, which talks about the enrolled devices, and Azure AD devices, which only talks about the Azure AD registered ones. So we just have to click on one of the device. Let's just say I'm talking about iPad, and then over here it gives us options of syncing it, removing the password, doing a remote lock, wiping it, retiring it, deleting it, and then we can revoke licenses. There are some for supervised devices only, so which options which are currently grayed out because this iPad was not enrolled as a DEP. So we discussed on how we can review the enrolled devices. We talked about how we can set up compliance policies, how to create them, and we talked about how we can make a conditional access policy in this tutorial, and how in the conditional access policy we have a feature which inculcates the compliance state of a device. Therefore, depending upon the compliance state of a device, a conditional access is going to govern whether the device is going to have access to an application in the cloud, or whether it's not going to have an application, whether it's not going to have an access to the application. Then we talked about setting up of configuration profiles, as in how we can push a SCEP profile, trusted profile, Wi-Fi profile, VPN profile. There are a whole bunch of them, and depending upon which one we are going to deploy The options are going to change, but we talked about what exactly configuration profile is and how exactly to deploy them, and there are various kinds of configuration profile. Then we also discussed the difference between a compliance and a configuration profile. For example, when we were seeing when we were making a device compliance policy, we were able to see that a compliance can be set for a password or the OS version, and a similar kind of a thing was there in the device configuration as well. So we discussed the difference between a device compliance and device configuration profile. We found out that device compliance profile is processed before, just after the enrollment. However, device configuration profile in the sequence of processing is processed later on. We found out that a compliance policy is not compulsory for the device to adhere to. So for example, if a compliance policy says that the device needs to have 5 characters in its password, but the device is not having 5 characters, the device will still be functional, the device will be still enrolled to Intune, and the users will still be able to access all the applications in the tenant, provided there is no conditional access based on it. However, in case of device configuration, it is compulsory on the device. Therefore, the user will have to adhere to the device configuration profile, and the users will have to change their password if the configuration policy says so. Finally, as far as the compliance is concerned, the main reason of the compliance policy is for the Intune admin to find out what kind of devices he has in the tenant, what kind of devices users are enrolling, what is the kind of devices and what is the behavior of devices, as in whether the devices are jailbroken, whether the devices are having a proper security or not. So it's pretty much for the Intune admin to understand the nature and the behavior and the kind of devices that he has enrolled to his tenant. Configuration is something for device configuration policy is something which the admin wants to enforce on all the users. If the admin wants that there is a certain setting which every user must adhere to and the user must not have an option to bypass that, then this is something which he would make use of. So we discussed what's the difference between the compliance and configuration and which one to make use of and when. Then we talked about how we can publish applications to users, may that be an LOB app, may that be a store app, may that be a desktop app, how exactly to do that, which blade to go to, and how we can deploy the apps as available and required, and the differences between those through assignments. Then we talked about what are app protection policy and app configuration policy, how to deploy them, what exactly is the significance of deploying an app protection policy, and how exactly is it protecting the data, and how exactly it can help us in protecting the leakage of data from one app to the other. Then we talked about Windows update ring, which applies only to Windows devices, and it's pretty much like patching a Windows device, though it does not give us the ability of selecting which exact patch should get installed and should not get installed. However, it gives us the basic functionality of deciding when the patching should occur under which window and what should be the end user's experience be when the device is undergoing the Windows update. Then we talked about how exactly an Intune admin can do an audit for all the devices that are there enrolled to the tenant, how we can exactly export a report and add various columns, filters, and find out various traits of the devices that are enrolled to the tenant. And after that, we talked about role-based access control, or the custom roles, which is basically just to delegate control. I mean, as I said, in case of, let's just say, help desk users, or in case we have a specific admin who's taking care of the configuration part of the devices, and a specific admin who's taking care of the compliance part of the devices, and a different admin who's taking care of deploying applications, we can create custom roles or use the ones that are already present and segregate these controls. Then we talked about general troubleshooting, wherein we talked about how we can make use of the troubleshooting blade and wherein we can enter a user and find out what are all the devices enrolled by that user, and how exactly the app deployment to that user is looking. So which is something which an Intune admin can make use of from troubleshooting point of view. So guys, that's pretty much it. I mean, the main aim of this tutorial again was to familiarize ourselves with this tenant, with this portal, and find out how exactly we have moved from the Silverlight console to the Ibiza console, how we can access them, how exactly the devices would look, and how exactly an admin would make use of this portal. So guys, I hope this video has been informative for you. Please go through it over and over again over the various sections, and go through the other tutorials which would clear more doubts. So once again guys, thank you so much for viewing this tutorial. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing. This is your friend Saurabh Sarkar signing off.